In Victorian England, some of the hardest working people in the country were also the most invisible. They witnessed everything. They held every secret, and a single misstep could destroy their entire existence. This is what it was truly like to be a servant in a grand Victorian mansion. Before we journey back in time together, if you're enjoying settling in for the evening with some history, consider hitting subscribe. And, I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. Now get comfortable. Adjust your pillow. Pull that blanket up just a bit higher. Feel how soft everything is, how warm, how safe. Because where we're headed, comfort was something you created for others, never for yourself. The bell is what rouses you. Not a gentle chime, not a polite ring. A sharp, insistent clanging that slices through the darkness of your attic room like a knife through cold butter. You've been asleep for perhaps 4 hours. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed before you arrived at Ashworth House 3 weeks ago. Your shoulders, your knees, the small of your back, muscles you never even considered, now cry out at you every morning. The room is pitch black. Winter mornings in 1885 don't arrive with sunrise at this hour. Just darkness, cold, and that cursed bell. Your eyes open to nothing, just darkness so thick you could slice it with a bread knife. The only sensation you're conscious of is the rough wool blanket against your chin and the freezing air attacking every exposed bit of skin. Your breath emerges in small white puffs, though you can't see them. You can sense them, though. Sense the warmth leaving your lungs and immediately getting swallowed by the cold. Beside you in the narrow bed, Mary Brennan is already stirring. Mary's been in service for 11 years, started as a scullery maid at 12, worked her way up to housemaid by 15, and now, at 23, she's one of the senior housemaids. She's also your roommate, your teacher, and though you're still too new to say it aloud, possibly your only friend in this massive stone monster of a house. "Up," Mary whispers. Her voice is thick with sleep, but there's an edge of urgency in it now, before the second bell. You don't know what happens after the second bell. You haven't dared to ask, but the way Mary says it, the way her body tenses even in the darkness, tells you everything you need to know. You don't want to find out. Your feet hit the floor and immediately you understand why the older maids warned you to sleep with your stockings on. The floorboards are so cold they actually burn, like walking on ice, like stepping onto a frozen pond in the dead of winter. Except this pond is inside a house that supposedly belongs to one of the wealthiest families in the county. Here's something they don't tell you about grand Victorian mansions. The beauty, the warmth, the comfort, that's all reserved for upstairs. The parts where the family lives, the parts where guests are entertained. The servants' quarters might as well be a different building, entirely different world really, same roof, two completely separate realities existing side by side. You fumble in the darkness for the pitcher of water on the small nightstand. When you pour it into the basin, you can actually hear tiny shards of ice clinking against the porcelain. The water had frozen overnight again. This is the 3rd time this week. Mary lights a candle stub, just for a moment, just long enough for you both to splash freezing water on your faces and pull on your work dresses. The dark ones, coarse fabric, practical, the kind of dress that says, "I'm about to spend the next 4 hours on my knees scrubbing grates and hauling coal." The pretty ones, the starched white aprons and neat caps, those come later after the dirty work is done, after you've made yourself invisible again. You have exactly 8 minutes from the time the bell rings until you're expected to be in the servants' hall. 8 minutes to wash, dress, make your bed and navigate 3 flights of narrow back stairs in near total darkness. The Ashworth family has gaslight in their quarters, even some of those fancy new electric lights in the main dining room. The servants get candles when they can afford them on their own wages. "Your cap's crooked," Mary murmurs as you both reach the second landing. She doesn't stop moving, just reaches back and adjusts it with the practiced ease of someone who's done this 1,000 times before. Mrs. Whitmore notices everything. Mrs. Whitmore, the housekeeper. You haven't spoken to her more than a dozen times since you arrived, but you've learned to recognize the sound of her keys from 3 rooms away. Every housekeeper in England, as far as you can tell, carries a set of keys on a special chain attached to her belt. They call it a chatelaine. Mrs. Whitmore's keys number somewhere around 40, and when she walks they produce a distinctive jingling that strikes fear into the hearts of every junior maid in the house. Those keys open everything. The linen closets, the pantries, the china cupboards, the cellar doors. Every locked space in the house falls under Mrs. Whitmore's domain. She knows where every napkin is, every candle, every bar of soap. She keeps ledgers, counts everything. And if something goes missing, even something as small as a single sugar cube, she will find out, and someone will answer for it. The servants' hall is already half full when you arrive. 15 people crowded around a long wooden table, their breath still visible in the early morning cold. The fire hasn't been lit yet. Of course it hasn't. That's your job. Or rather, it's your job to help with the 10 other fireplaces scattered throughout the main house, the ones that need to be blazing by the time the family wakes at 8. At the head of the table sits Mr. Finch, the butler, king of the lower world, at least on the male side. He's maybe 50, with steel grey hair and a posture so rigid you'd think someone had replaced his spine with an iron rod. Mr. Finch doesn't smile. Mr. Finch doesn't joke. Mr. Finch speaks in measured sentences that carry the weight of absolute authority, and when Mr. Finch gives an instruction, you follow it. No questions. No hesitation, not if you want to keep your position. Next to him, leaving one chair empty between them because hierarchy matters, even in seating arrangements, sits Mrs. Whitmore. Her face is impossible to read. Not cruel exactly, just severe, like someone who has spent so many years maintaining perfect order that any other expression would feel like a breach of duty. You slide onto the bench at the far end of the table, near the door. That's where the junior servants sit, the ones lowest in the pecking order. The scullery maid is there, a girl even younger than you, maybe 13, with raw red hands that tell the story of too many hours in cold dishwater. Next to her is one of the footman's assistants, a skinny boy who can't seem to keep his eyes open. Breakfast is bread, a slice each, some tea, weak enough to see through, shared between the lot of you. Those who arrived first got butter. You didn't arrive first. You'll remember that for tomorrow? You chew slowly, trying to make it last. Try not to think about what the Ashworth family will be eating in a few hours. Fresh eggs, bacon, kippers, toast with marmalade, fresh fruit. Even in winter, coffee served in delicate china cups. The leftover scraps from their breakfast will make their way down to the servants' hall eventually, but that's hours away, and by then you'll have already lit 8 fireplaces, emptied a dozen chamber pots, and hauled more buckets of hot water than you can count. At exactly 10 minutes past 5, Mrs. Whitmore stands. The scraping of her chair silences any remaining whispers. Every spine straightens. Every eye finds a spot on the table to study intently. "Today's schedule," she announces, her voice crisp as the winter air outside. "There will be guests arriving for dinner this evening. The blue guest room will need preparing. Extra attention to the formal rooms. I expect to see my reflection in every polished surface before noon." She doesn't look at anyone in particular, but you feel her gaze sweep across the table like a searchlight. Any servant found idle will answer to me personally. That's it. That's the morning address. In a household of nearly 30 staff, Mrs. Whitmore manages to communicate everything you need to know in under 60 seconds. The rest you'll figure out as you go, following Mary's lead, watching, learning, trying not to make any mistakes that could cost you everything. Because that's the thing about this job. It's not just a job, it's your entire life, your home, your food, your future. Everything depends on staying in the good graces of the household. One serious mistake, one accusation of dishonesty, one moment of being too slow or too visible or too anything, and you're out. Not just out of a job, out on the street. No reference, no character. no future. Back home in the tiny village where you grew up, your mother cried when you left for service. Not because she was sad to see you go, because she was relieved. One less mouth to feed. One less body in an already crowded cottage. Your father had died 3 winters ago. Consumption. By the time your mother found a position for you through the local registry, you'd been eating nothing but cabbage soup and prayers for nearly a year. This is better. Even with the cold, even with the aching muscles and the 4 a.m. wake-up calls and the constant gnawing fear of doing something wrong, at least here you eat every day. At least here you have a bed, shared, yes, cramped, certainly. But a bed with a blanket and a roof that doesn't leak, that's the bargain. That's what every servant in every grand house across England understands. You trade your freedom for security, your identity for a uniform, your name, sometimes quite literally, for a title. Some households even rename their servants to avoid confusion. If the last housemaid was named Sarah, you become Sarah too. Your own name is irrelevant. You're a function, a role, a pair of hands and a pair of feet designed to accomplish tasks while remaining completely invisible, but you're getting ahead of yourself. The philosophy comes later. Right now you have fireplaces to light. Mary is already on her feet, heading toward the door that leads to the main house. You follow, your bread barely settled in your stomach, your fingers still clumsy with cold. The servants' corridors are narrow, the ceilings are low. Everything about these spaces is designed to remind you that you're meant to be neither seen nor heard by anyone important. The main house is a different world entirely. When you push through the green baize door that separates the servants' wing from the family quarters, it's like stepping into another country. The ceilings soar. The walls are covered in silk paper, deep crimson and gold. Paintings line the hallways, portraits of Ashworths going back generations, their eyes following you as you move silently across the polished floors. And the silence. That's the strangest part. The house is asleep, or seems to be, but you know it's not really empty. Somewhere upstairs, behind heavy wooden doors, the family slumbers in feather beds with thick quilts and warming pans. They'll wake in a few hours, comfortable and rested, completely unaware of the small army of workers who've been moving through their homes since before dawn. Your job, quite literally, is to make magic happen. To light fires without being seen, to clean rooms without leaving a trace, to ensure that when Lady Ashworth opens her eyes at 8:30 the house is already warm, the curtains are drawn back just so, and a pot of hot water is waiting for her morning wash. She shouldn't have to think about how any of it happened. It should simply be done. Magic. That's what the upper class calls it when they're feeling generous. Magic and good breeding and the natural order of things. But you know the truth now. There's no magic. Just you and Mary, and the 30 other people who call the servants' quarters home. 30 pairs of hands working 16 hours a day, 6.5 days a week, to maintain the illusion. Today you've been assigned to help with the ground floor fireplaces. Yesterday it was chamber pots. Tomorrow it might be the endless task of polishing silver until your reflection stares back at you from every surface. You've learned not to ask why. Orders come from Mrs. Whitmore through the senior maids, and you follow them. That's all there is to it. The first fireplace is in the morning room. It's a lovely space, if you're being honest. Pale blue walls, comfortable chairs, arranged before tall windows that will soon catch the weak winter sunlight. A piano sits in the corner, draped with a fringed cloth. Fresh flowers, even in January, fill a crystal vase on the side table. You don't know where the flowers come from, don't know who cuts them, who arranges them, who pays for them. That's someone else's concern. Your concern is the fireplace, and more specifically, the coal scuttle sitting beside it. Mary hands you a metal ashpan and a small brush. Watch first, she whispers, then do exactly as I do. She kneels before the cold hearth with a grace that comes from years of practice. First, she spreads an old sheet on the floor to catch any mess. Then she begins removing the ashes from yesterday's fire, carefully, methodically, without raising any dust. Each movement is precise, economical. No wasted motion, no unnecessary sound. The ashes go into the pan. Later, they'll be taken to the kitchen to be sifted. The small pieces of unburned coal, the cinders, will be saved and used to light tomorrow's fires. Nothing in a Victorian household goes to waste. Not coal, not candle stubs, not leftover food, not even the time servants spend standing still when they could be working. Once the ashes are cleared, Mary takes a small brush and sweeps out the grate. Then comes the black lead. It's a thick, dark paste that smells of iron and something faintly chemical. She applies it to the metal grate and fire surround with a cloth, working it into every crevice, then buffs it to a high shine with a different brush. The family notices this, she murmurs without looking up. Might not know what they're looking at, but they notice when it's not done. That's the thing about being invisible. When you do your job right, no one sees you at all. But let one thing slip, leave one smudge, and suddenly everyone's asking questions. She's right. You've seen it happen, not to yourself, not yet, but to others. A footman dismissed for wearing scuffed shoes to dinner service. A kitchen maid sent packing for burning the toast. The standards in a house like this are impossibly high, and the consequences for failing to meet them are swift and absolute. When Mary finishes polishing, she begins laying the new fire. Crumpled newspaper first, then small sticks of kindling arranged in a careful pyramid, then larger pieces of coal balanced on top. She strikes a match, touches it to the paper, and watches as the flame catches and begins to spread. "Don't leave until you're sure it's caught proper," she says. "Last thing you want is for the fire to go out and have to be relit." Mrs. Whitmore counts the matches. She counts the matches. Of course she does. You're starting to realise that in this house everything is counted. Every lump of coal, every candle, every bar of soap, every single thing that costs money is monitored, measured, and accounted for. Waste is a sin. Carelessness is a dismissible offence. You watch the flames dance for a moment, mesmerised by their warmth. It feels almost criminal to be this close to heat and comfort, when you know that in a few minutes you'll be back in the cold hallways, moving on to the next fireplace, the next task, the next small miracle that needs performing before the family stirs. "Come on," Mary says, already gathering her supplies. 3 more on this floor, then up to the bedrooms, and we need to be finished before the family comes down for breakfast. If they see us, we're done for." You nod, following her out of the morning room and into the corridor. The house is still quiet, still dark in places. The January dawn barely beginning to lighten the windows. But somewhere upstairs, someone is stirring. You can feel it. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, a door opening and closing, footsteps muffled by carpet moving toward the bathroom. You freeze. Mary freezes too. For a long moment, neither of you breathes. Then Mary grabs your arm and pulls you into an alcove behind a tall potted fern. You press yourself against the wall, heart hammering as the footsteps grow closer. A figure appears at the top of the stairs, male, tall, moving with the easy confidence of someone who has never once had to consider whether they belong somewhere. It's Master James, the eldest son, 22 years old, heir to the Ashworth fortune and, according to the whispers in the servants' hall, the reason the last housemaid in your position was dismissed. He pauses at the top of the stairs, yawns, scratches his head, and turns back toward his room. The danger passes. You release a breath you didn't realise you were holding. "Close," Mary murmurs. "Too close. If he'd seen us, we'd have to explain what we were doing here at this hour, and then we'd be behind schedule, and then Mrs. Whitmore would want to know why." You nod, still shaking slightly. This is what life is like in a grand house, Constant vigilance, constant awareness of where you are, where the family is, where you're supposed to be and not supposed to be at any given moment. The back stairs, the service corridors, the narrow passageways hidden behind the walls, those are your domain. The main rooms, the grand staircases, the family quarters, those belong to a different species entirely. As you make your way to the next fireplace, a sound catches your ear, familiar now, but still capable of making your stomach drop. The bells. In the servants' hall, mounted high on the wall near the ceiling, hangs a board fitted with 24 brass bells. Each one is connected by a complex network of wires and pulleys to a different room in the house. When someone pulls a bell rope in the library, a specific bell rings downstairs. When someone pulls the cord in the master bedroom, a different bell sounds. An experienced servant can tell from the tone alone which room is calling. Mrs. Whitmore, they say, can identify any bell in the house from 3 floors away, even while carrying on a conversation about menu planning. It's like having ears everywhere, eyes everywhere. The house itself seems to be watching, listening, waiting to catch you in a moment of laziness or inattention. Right now the bells are silent. The family isn't awake yet, but soon they will be. And when they ring, someone will answer instantly, without question, without hesitation. Because that's the job. That's the life. You exist to respond to their needs before they even realise they have them. To light fires they'll never see being built, to clean rooms they'll never see being cleaned, to carry water, lay out clothes, prepare meals and manage 1,000 small details of daily life, so that the people upstairs never have to think about any of it. You are invisible, you are essential, you are replaceable, and as the cold winter morning stretches ahead of you, filled with labour and fear and the constant drumbeat of duty, you realise that this, all of this, is only the beginning. There are 8 more fireplaces waiting, 12 chamber pots to empty, beds to make, water to carry, floors to scrub, silver to polish. The day has barely started, and somewhere in the back of your mind a small voice whispers the question you've been trying not to ask yourself since the moment you arrived at Ashworth House. How long can you survive like this? The morning room fireplace is blazing nicely now. You've moved on to the library, then the drawing room, then the small parlour where Lady Ashworth takes her morning correspondence. Each fire follows the same ritual. Ashes out, grate, polished, kindling arranged, coal balanced, match struck, flame caught. By the time you finish the last one, your knees are black with soot, and your back feels like someone has been using it as a washboard. The muscles across your shoulders have knotted into something resembling rope. Your hands, already chapped from yesterday's work, are now streaked with black lead and coal dust. But the fires are lit, all of them, and you've managed to stay invisible. Mary checks her small pocket watch, a treasured possession she inherited from her grandmother. 7:15. Good. We've got time. Time for what? You want to ask, but you're learning that questions are a luxury in this house. Better to watch, better to follow, better to figure things out on your own rather than risk looking stupid or slow. The answer becomes clear soon enough. Time for breakfast. The real breakfast. The one where the servants actually sit down and eat something more substantial than a slice of bread. Back through the green baize door, back into the narrow corridors of the servants' wing. The temperature drops immediately, not as cold as the attic, but noticeably cooler than the rooms you just left. The family's comfort doesn't extend to these hallways. Why would it? They never see them. The servants' hall is transformed. The long table that held 15 shivering people an hour ago now seats nearly 30, and the smell of actual food fills the air. Porridge, bacon, toast, tea that looks like it might actually contain some tea. But here's the thing nobody told you about. There are rules about where you sit, not just any rules. A whole system, a hierarchy within a hierarchy, wheels within wheels, ranks and positions and careful gradations of status that determine everything from where you sleep to what you eat to whether anyone will bother learning your name. At the head of the table sits Mr. Finch, the butler, still ramrod straight, still expressionless. A cup of tea steams before him, the good china, not the chipped cups the rest of you use. To his right, in the place of honour, sits Mrs. Whitmore with her ring of keys. They don't speak to each other. They don't need to. They've been running this household together for 15 years, and their communication happens in glances and subtle nods that you can't begin to interpret. Below them, arranged in careful order of precedence, sit the upper servants. The cook, Mrs. Hartley, a stout woman with flour perpetually dusted on her forearms. The lady's maid, Miss Perkins, whose job it is to dress Lady Ashworth and maintain her extensive wardrobe. The valet, Mr. Crawford, who performs the same service for Lord Ashworth. The head housemaid, the head footman, the senior kitchen staff. These people eat well. Their plates are full. Their tea is hot. They have butter for their toast and sugar for their porridge. They sit at the upper end of the table, near the fire, in chairs that actually have cushions. Then there's a gap, a visible physical gap in the seating arrangement, almost like a moat separating one kingdom from another. Below that gap sit the lower servants, the junior housemaids, the footmen, the kitchen maids, the scullery maid, the hall boy, you. Your end of the table is furthest from the fire. Your chairs are plain wooden benches, your porridge is thinner, your bacon fattier, your tea weaker. Not because there isn't enough food to go around, there's plenty, but because this is how things are done. This is how they've always been done. The upper servants get the best of everything and the lower servants get what's left. It's a copy of the world upstairs, you realise. The family takes the best and the servants get what remains. And within the servant class, the pattern repeats itself. Upper servants first, lower servants second. It's hierarchies all the way down. Mary slides onto the bench beside you, her plate already filled. She's been here long enough to know exactly where to sit, exactly how much to take, exactly how to navigate these invisible boundaries without causing offence. "Eat quick," she murmurs. "Upper servants leave in 10 minutes. Once they go, we can talk." You don't understand what she means until it happens. At exactly 7:45, Mr. Finch sets down his teacup. The sound is almost imperceptible, but every upper servant at the table responds to it like a signal. They rise almost in unison and file out of the servants' hall through a door you hadn't noticed before. "They're going to the housekeeper's room," Mary explains. Once they've gone, the upper servants take their pudding and cheese in there away from the lower staff. It's called the pug's parlour, though nobody seems to know why. They have their own space, their own rituals, their own world within a world. "It's like that everywhere," Mary says, spooning porridge into her mouth between words. "The butler doesn't do footman's work. The housekeeper doesn't polish silver. Everyone has their own job, their own place, their own set of rules. Cross those lines and you're in trouble." You nod, trying to absorb it all. The structure is dizzying. Back in your village there was the squire, and there was everyone else. Simple. Clear. Here there are layers upon layers of rank and privilege, each one with its own customs and expectations. "Mr. Finch," you venture quietly. "What's he actually like?" Mary's spoon pauses halfway to her mouth. She glances around, making sure no one is close enough to hear. "He's fair," she says finally. "Strict as iron, but fair. Does his job better than anyone I've ever seen. Runs this house like a general runs an army. Every footman answers to him. Every piece of silver in this house passes through his hands. He knows where every bottle of wine is kept, what year it was bottled, which guests prefer which vintage. Lord Ashworth trusts him completely." She lowers her voice even further. "But here's the thing about Mr. Finch. He knows everything. Everything that happens in this house, upstairs or down. He sees things nobody else sees, hears things nobody else hears. If you're slacking off, if you're talking to someone you shouldn't be talking to, if you're taking something that doesn't belong to you, he'll know. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually." You swallow hard. The porridge suddenly tastes like paste. The keys, you say, remembering the heavy ring that hangs at his waist. He has keys too, like Mrs. Whitmore, different keys. He has the wine cellar, the silver pantry, the master's study, the valuables, things that could be stolen, things that matter. Mary shrugs. Mrs. Whitmore controls the household. Mr. Finch controls the wealth. It's a partnership, you realise. Butler and housekeeper working together, running the entire operation from below stairs. The family upstairs might own the house, might pay the wages, might technically be in charge. But the day-to-day running of things, that belongs to Mr. Finch and Mrs. Whitmore. They are the brain of the household. Everyone else is just muscle. And you are the lowest muscle of all. What about Mrs. Whitmore? You ask Mary. She terrifies me. Mary actually laughs at that, a quiet sound quickly stifled. She terrifies everyone. That's her job. But listen, she leans closer. I've been here 3 years. In that time I've seen Mrs. Whitmore dismiss 4 girls. Every single one of them deserved it. Lazy or dishonest or talking back when they shouldn't. She's hard, yes, but she's not cruel. Do your work. Keep your head down, don't steal anything, don't get too friendly with a footman and you'll be fine. Don't get too friendly with a footman. You file that away for later. There's a story there, you're certain, but now isn't the time to ask. The clock on the wall shows 7:55. In 5 minutes, the lower servants will need to be back at their posts, scattered throughout the house to continue the endless work of maintaining a mansion for people who barely acknowledge their existence. You shovel the last of your porridge into your mouth and drain your tea. Cold now, but you don't care. Calories are calories. Warmth is warmth. You take what you can get. Mary leads you back upstairs for the next round of duties. The family is stirring now. You can hear movement above, footsteps on carpeted floors, the distant sound of a door closing. Somewhere a bell rings, then another, then a third. The house is waking up. The real work is about to begin. Your assignment for the next 3 hours is chamber pots. Yes, chamber pots. The porcelain containers that wealthy Victorians use when they don't want to walk all the way to the water closet in the middle of the night. Every bedroom has one, usually tucked discreetly under the bed or behind a screen, and every morning someone has to empty them. That someone today is you. There's a rhythm to it, Mary explains as she hands you a covered pail. The family leaves their rooms for breakfast around 8:30. That's when you go in. Quick, quiet, get the pot, empty it in the slop pail, rinse it, put it back. You should be in and out in under 2 minutes. Under 2 minutes to enter a bedroom, locate the chamber pot, carry it to the servants' washroom, empty it, clean it, and return it to its proper place. All without making a sound. All without being seen. What if they're still in the room? You ask. Mary looks at you like you've just asked what colour the sky is. Then you don't go in. You wait. You come back later. Under no circumstances do you enter a family member's bedroom while they're in it. That's not just a rule. That's the rule. Break it and you're gone. No warning, no second chance. Gone. You nod quickly. The message is received. The first bedroom is Lady Ashworth's private chamber. It's connected to the master bedroom by a shared dressing room, a common arrangement in wealthy households. You press your ear to the door and listen. Silence. Good. The door opens without a sound. Someone, probably Mary herself on a previous morning, has oiled the hinges to perfection. You slip inside and immediately your breath catches. The room is beautiful. Beautiful in a way you've never experienced before. The walls are covered in pale silk, hand-painted with delicate flowers. The bed is massive, a 4-poster draped with velvet curtains piled high with pillows and quilts. The carpet beneath your feet is so soft it feels like walking on clouds. A fire burns in the marble fireplace, the one you lit hours ago, casting golden light across everything. And the smell, not the damp wool and coal dust of the servants' quarters. Something else. Lavender, maybe. Rose water. Something expensive and lovely that seems to float in the air itself. You could stand here all day drinking it in, but you have 90 seconds left. The chamber pot is where Mary said it would be, behind a Chinese screen in the corner. You grab it, cover firmly in place, and hurry back to the servants' corridor. The slop pail is waiting in a small closet near the back stairs. Empty, rinse, return. 87 seconds. Not bad. But here's the thing about chamber pots. They're the most humiliating part of the job, yes, but they're also the most intimate. When you empty Lady Ashworth's chamber pot, when you handle this most private aspect of her daily existence, you are closer to her than her own children ever get. You know things about her that nobody else knows. The medicine bottle on her nightstand, the half-written letter on her desk, the small portrait tucked behind the mirror. A young man in military uniform who doesn't appear anywhere else in the house. These are secrets, private moments, glimpses into a life that you serve but can never be part of. And you must never, ever speak of them to anyone. That's the first rule of personal service. And you learn it without anyone having to tell you. What happens in the family's rooms stays in the family's rooms. You see nothing. You hear nothing. You remember nothing. Your discretion is absolute, not because you are asked for it, but because you understand on some deep instinctive level that this is the price of being allowed into these spaces at all. The other bedrooms follow the same pattern. Master James's room, the one you saw him emerge from this morning, is surprisingly untidy. Clothes on the floor, books stacked haphazardly, an overflowing ashtray by the window. Miss Catherine's room, the younger daughter, is pristine but cold somehow. No personal touches, no warmth, like a display in a shop window rather than a place where someone actually lives. By the time you've finished all the chambers, your arms are aching from carrying the heavy slop pail up and down the back stairs. The pail goes to the outdoor privy to be emptied properly, a job that falls to the hall boy, thank God. Even in the servant hierarchy, there's always someone below you. The rest of the morning blurs together. You help Mary with the bed-making, sheets pulled tight, hospital corners, not a wrinkle in sight, pillows fluffed and arranged just so, quilts straightened, curtains adjusted, water pitchers filled. The family's beds are remade completely every day, even though they've only been slept in for a few hours. Nothing here is done by halves. Between tasks, Mary continues your education, the rules, the do's and don'ts, the 1,000 small ways a servant can get into trouble without ever meaning to. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't look the family in the eye. Don't laugh in the corridors. Don't run even if you're late. Don't carry anything without covering it with a cloth. Don't use the main stairs. Don't enter a room if you can hear voices inside. Don't touch the family's books. Don't touch the family's letters. Don't touch anything that isn't specifically part of your job. And above all, don't be seen. The perfect servant, Mary says, stripping the sheets from Miss Catherine's bed, is invisible. You do your work, and when you leave, it's like you were never there. The fire's lit, the room's clean, the water's fresh, but there's no sign of how it happened. Magic, magic, that word again. The wealthy think their comfort appears by magic, and you are learning to be the magician they never see. The hours pass. Noon comes and goes. The servants' dinner is heavier than breakfast, a proper meal of meat and vegetables eaten quickly in the hall before the afternoon duties begin. You sit in your assigned spot at the lower end of the table, eating food that was probably on the family's plates last night, now reheated and served to the staff. Nobody complains. Nobody even thinks about complaining. This is the deal. This is the life. You work yourself half to death 6.5 days a week, and in return you get a roof over your head and food in your belly. For millions of people outside these walls, that would be a dream. You try to remember that. Try to remind yourself of the village you left behind, the cold cottage with the leaking roof, the nights when there was nothing to eat but watered-down soup. This is better. This is security. This is a future of a sort, even if that future looks like more of the same, stretching ahead of you for years and decades, rising before dawn, working until you drop, sleeping in a cold attic room, repeating it all again tomorrow. But you're getting ahead of yourself again. The afternoon is waiting. There are silver teaspoons that need polishing, apparently dozens of them, and you've been told you'll be helping the parlourmaid with the afternoon dusting in the formal rooms. Different tasks, same purpose. Keep the machine running. Keep the magic happening. Stay invisible. You push back from the table, legs aching, hands raw, mind spinning with all the rules and ranks and rituals you're trying to absorb. Just keep going. That's all you can do. Just keep going. The silver pantry is a small room off the butler's corridor, lined floor to ceiling with shelves, and on those shelves, arranged with military precision, sits more silver than you've ever seen in your life. Candlesticks, serving platters, soup tureens, tea sets, cruet stands, fish knives, cake forks, asparagus tongs, things you don't even have names for, each one polished to such a high shine that you can see your own startled reflection staring back at you. "Sit," says Agnes, the parlourmaid who's been assigned to supervise you. She's maybe 25, with quick hands and a permanent furrow between her brows. "Watch first, then copy." She picks up a teaspoon from the pile on the table. It looks clean to you, spotless even, but Agnes holds it up to the light, squints at it, and shakes her head. "See that? That dull spot near the handle? Fingerprint from yesterday's tea service, probably one of the footmen." She dips a soft cloth into a jar of thick pink paste and begins rubbing the spoon in small circular motions. "This is plate powder, mixed fresh every morning. Jeweller's rouge, chalk, and ammonia. Smells terrible. Works beautifully. The smell does hit you now, sharp and chemical, burning the inside of your nose. You'll get used to it," Agnes says. Eventually you stop noticing. She hands you a cloth and a spoon and nods toward the pile. Every piece. No fingerprints, no tarnish, no spots. Mr. Finch inspects the silver before dinner service. If he finds so much as a smudge, we all hear about it. You pick up the spoon. Such a small thing, really. Just a bit of metal shaped for scooping sugar. But in this house, even the smallest things carry enormous weight. A smudge on a teaspoon, a crease in a bed sheet, a fireplace that hasn't been properly blacked. These tiny failures add up. They reveal the hand behind the magic. They remind the family that their comfort requires effort, and that is absolutely unacceptable. So you polish spoon after spoon, fork after fork, your fingers cramping around the cloth, the ammonia burning your eyes, the pile shrinks slowly. Your reflection in the growing stack of finished pieces looks exhausted, dark circles under the eyes, hair escaping from under your cap. A smear of something grey across one cheek. You barely recognise yourself anymore. "You're doing well," Agnes says, not looking up from her own work. "Better than the last girl. She cried on her second day and quit on her third. Couldn't handle the hours." You want to ask what happened to her, where she went, what becomes of girls who can't handle the hours. But you already know, don't you? The workhouse, the streets, a factory, if she's lucky, where the hours are shorter, but the machines can take your fingers. There are no good alternatives. That's why you stay. That's why everyone stays. The afternoon light is fading by the time you finish the silver. Your back is screaming. Your eyes are watering from the plate powder fumes. But the teaspoons are perfect. Every single one. Mr. Finch will have nothing to complain about. Agnes dismisses you with a nod. Kitchen next. Mrs. Hartley needs extra hands for dinner prep. Guests tonight, remember? Right, the guests. You'd almost forgotten. Some business associate of Lord Ashworth's coming for dinner with his wife, which means a formal meal, multiple courses, the good china, the best wine, an elaborate performance of wealth and taste, orchestrated entirely by the servants, who will remain invisible throughout. The kitchen is chaos when you arrive. Mrs. Hartley, the cook, stands at the centre of it like a general commanding a battle. She's shouting orders at the kitchen maid, who's shouting orders at the scullery maid, who's too busy scrubbing pots to shout at anyone. Steam rises from half a dozen pots on the massive iron range. The air smells of roasting meat and simmering stock and something sweet baking in the bread oven. And in the middle of it all, moving with surprising grace despite her considerable size, Mrs. Hartley orchestrates everything. A flick of her wrist sends the kitchen maid scurrying for more butter. A bark sends the scullery girl running for clean towels. She tastes, she stirs, she seasons, she adjusts, all without ever seeming to stop moving. You stand in the doorway, uncertain. Nobody told you what to do once you got here. Mrs. Hartley spots you. Her eyes narrow. "You, new girl, can you peel potatoes?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then peel." She jerks her chin toward a mountain of potatoes sitting in a basket near the scullery door. All of them, thin skins, no eyes left behind. "Annie will show you where." Annie. That must be the scullery maid. You find her in the scullery, up to her elbows in greasy dishwater, scrubbing at a pot that's bigger than she is. She's young, younger than you even, maybe 12 or 13, with raw red hands and a face that's permanently flushed from the heat of the water. "Potatoes are there," she says without looking up. "Peelings go in that bucket. Don't let Mrs. Hartley catch you wasting any flesh." She counts everything. Of course she does. Everyone in this house counts everything. You grab a knife and a potato and start peeling. The work is mindless, repetitive, soothing in its own way. Peel, turn, peel, turn, peel. The potato shrinks in your hand as the skin curls away in long brown ribbons. Behind you, Annie keeps scrubbing, the rhythm of her brush against the pot creating a kind of music. Scrub, scrub, dunk, repeat. "How long have you been here?" you ask, breaking the silence. Annie's brush pauses for just a moment. 18 months. Started when I was 11. Came from the workhouse. 11. She was 11 years old when she started this job, scrubbing pots and fetching coal and lighting fires before dawn, all at an age when you were still playing with dolls in your mother's cottage. Is it? You're not sure how to finish the question. Is it worth it? Is it bearable? Is it going to get better? "It's a roof," Annie says simply, "and food. 3 meals a day, more than I ever got before. Mrs. Hartley's hard, but she's fair, doesn't hit like some cooks do, doesn't steal our wages. Could be worse. Could be worse. That's the motto of every servant in every grand house across England. Could be worse. Could be the workhouse. Could be the streets. Could be the factories where children lose fingers to machinery and lungs to cotton dust. At least here you have a bed. At least here you eat. The bar is set so low it's practically underground, and still, somehow, you're grateful to clear it. You peel in silence for a while, the pile of potatoes slowly shrinking, the bucket of peelings slowly filling. From the kitchen you can hear Mrs. Hartley's voice, sharp and commanding, directing the elaborate dance of dinner preparation. "The soup first," she's saying. "Clear consommé, has to be perfect. Lady Ashworth is showing off tonight. Then the fish course, sole with white sauce. Then the roast beef, pink in the middle, or Lord Ashworth will have my head. Then the remove, pheasant with bread sauce. Then the vegetables. Then the pudding, trifle and fruit ices. Coffee to follow. 7 courses for 4 people. Hours of preparation, hours of cooking, hours of plating and serving and clearing away. And at the end of it, most of the food will come back to the kitchen, half-eaten, to be reheated and served to the servants tomorrow, or given to the poor at the back door. Waste, you think. Such waste. But then, what do you know? You've never sat at a table with 7 courses, never tasted sole or pheasant or trifle. The food that goes up those stairs exists in a world as foreign to you as the moon. You eat what comes back down, and you're grateful for it. The kitchen maid, a girl named Elsie with a round face and perpetually flour-dusted apron, appears in the scullery doorway. "Mrs. Hartley wants those potatoes now, and you're to help me with the pastry once you're done." "Pastry? You've never made pastry in your life. The bread at your mother's cottage was heavy and dark, made from whatever grain could be spared. Fancy pastry is as mysterious to you as the silver you polished this afternoon, but you nod and gather up the peeled potatoes in a large bowl, into the kitchen, into the heat and chaos, dropping them on the work table where Mrs. Hartley is already reaching for them. "Good," she grunts. "The highest praise you've received all day. Now pastry." Elsie is already at a marble slab, a mound of pale dough before her. She's working it with her hands, folding and pressing in a motion that looks almost hypnotic. Puff pastry, she explains. For the vol au vents, appetizers for the soup course. Watch how I fold it. You need cold hands and a light touch. The butter has to stay in layers. See, that's what makes it puff up in the oven. You watch, you try to learn. When Elsie hands you a small piece of dough to practice with, you fold and press, trying to mimic her movements. The dough feels strange under your fingers, soft and cold, and somehow alive. Not bad, Elsie says. You've got the hands for it. Keep practicing. It's the first compliment you've received about anything other than not being as terrible as the last girl. You hold on to it like a treasure. The afternoon wears on. The kitchen fills with smells that make your stomach growl, even though you just ate dinner a few hours ago. The roast beef goes into the oven, filling the air with the scent of rendering fat and searing meat. The consommé simmers on the back of the range, clear as glass and concentrated with flavour. The vegetables are prepped, the sauce is started, the trifle assembled layer by careful layer. And through it all, Annie stays in the scullery, scrubbing. When a pot is used, she scrubs it. When a pan is dirtied, she scrubs it. When Mrs. Hartley needs clean utensils, Annie provides them. She is the bottom of the bottom, the lowest of the low, and her entire existence revolves around that stone sink and the endless parade of dirty dishes that passes through it. You help where you can, chopping onions until your eyes stream with tears, grinding spices in a mortar until your arm aches, running to the larder for butter, to the cellar for wine, to the pantry for sugar. Whatever Mrs. Hartley needs, you fetch. You're a pair of hands and a pair of feet. Nothing more. Useful only as long as you're useful. By 6 o'clock, the preparations are nearly complete. The soup is ready to be ladled, the fish is resting. The roast is coming out of the oven, perfectly pink, just as Mrs. Hartley promised. The footmen have begun to appear, changed now into their formal livery, ready to carry the elaborate meal upstairs. You're not needed for the service itself. That's a job for the trained staff, the ones who know how to move silently, how to serve from the left and clear from the right, how to anticipate needs before they're spoken. You're just a housemaid, barely 3 weeks into the job. Your place is here in the kitchen, watching the dishes come and go, but you catch a glimpse through the green baize door as it swings open to let a footman through. Just a flash of the corridor beyond, the one that leads to the dining room. Candlelight, the glitter of crystal, the low murmur of conversation. A world of warmth and beauty just a few steps away, utterly unreachable. Then the door swings shut and you're back in the kitchen, surrounded by steam and shouting and the clatter of pots. Don't stand there gaping, Mrs. Hartley snaps. Help Annie with those dishes. The first course is done, which means the second course starts. Move. You move. The dishes start coming down almost immediately. Soup bowls, still warm. The dregs of consommé clinging to their rims. Then fish plates. Delicate bones scattered across them, then the large platter that held the roast, now empty except for a puddle of pink juice and a few overlooked scraps. Annie is already at the sink, hands moving in the water, scrubbing with a speed born of long practice. You grab a drying cloth and start on the dishes she's already washed, working as fast as you can to keep up. The kitchen becomes a blur of motion. Dishes down, dishes washed, dishes up. Food plated and sent through the green baize door, empty plates returned, scraps saved, surfaces wiped clean before the next wave. It's an elaborate ballet, perfectly choreographed, and you're just one small dancer trying not to trip over your own feet. By the time the dessert goes up, your arms are shaking with fatigue. You've been working for 15 hours straight with nothing but a few minutes here and there to shovel food into your mouth. The initial rush of nervous energy that carried you through the morning has long since faded, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion that makes even breathing feel like effort. But the work isn't done. It's never done. The guests don't leave until nearly 11. The family retires shortly after, their footsteps creaking on the floors above. as they make their way to their bedrooms. Below stairs, the last of the dishes are being washed, the last of the pots scoured, the kitchen slowly returning to order. Mrs. Hartley releases you with a grunt and a wave of her hand. Breakfast at 5. Don't be late. You won't be late. You can't afford to be late. The back stairs seem steeper than they did this morning. Your legs wobble on each step. Your hands, raw from dishwater and plate powder, throb with every heartbeat. The attic room, when you finally reach it, is cold and dark and absolutely perfect. Mary is already in bed, her breathing slow and even. You don't bother with the basin of water. Don't bother changing into your nightdress. You just strip off your shoes and your apron and collapse onto the narrow mattress, pulling the thin blanket up to your chin. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, and the day after that. This is your life now. Invisible, essential, replaceable. And somewhere in the darkness, just before sleep claims you, you find yourself wondering about the woman whose chamber pot you emptied this morning. Lady Ashworth, with her lavender-scented room and her secret portrait. Does she ever think about the people who make her world run? Does she ever wonder who lights her fires, who empties her slops, who polishes her silver until it gleams? Probably not. That's the whole point, isn't it? You're not supposed to be thought about. You're supposed to be invisible, and you're getting very, very good at it. A week passes, then 2, then a month. You're starting to understand the rhythm of this place, the way the house breathes, the patterns of movement, the predictable moments of danger, the small windows of safety scattered throughout each day. Your body has adjusted to waking before dawn. Your hands have grown rough enough that the dishwater barely stings anymore. The cold attic room feels almost normal now, just another part of the landscape of your life. But understanding the rhythm is not the same as mastering it. That takes longer, much longer. It's a Tuesday afternoon in early February when you learn the most important lesson of all. You're carrying a bucket of coal up the back stairs, headed for the second floor. Lady Ashworth has complained that her sitting room is too cold, which means someone needs to add fuel to the fire, which means you've been sent running with a heavy bucket and strict instructions to be quick about it. The back stairs are narrow, steep, designed for servants to move quickly between floors without being seen by the family. There are 2 sets of them in Ashworth House, one near the kitchen and one near the family's bedrooms. You've learned to navigate them in near darkness, counting steps, memorising which boards creak and which stay silent. But today you're rushing. The bucket is heavier than usual. You're taking the steps 2 at a time, trying to make up for lost minutes, trying to avoid Mrs. Whitmore's disappointed frown. You don't hear the footsteps until it's too late. The door at the top of the stairs opens just as you reach the landing. Light floods in. And there, silhouetted against the glow of the family's corridor, stands Miss Catherine Ashworth. Time stops. She's 17, younger than you by a year, though you'd never know it from looking. Her dress is pale blue silk trimmed with lace that probably cost more than your entire annual wages. Her hair is pinned up in an elaborate arrangement that must have taken Miss Perkins an hour to create. She looks like something from a painting, something from another world entirely, and she's staring right at you. Every lesson Mary has ever taught you floods through your mind at once. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't look them in the eye. Don't move until they've passed. Make yourself small. Make yourself invisible. Make yourself disappear. You press yourself against the wall of the stairwell, bucket clutched to your chest, eyes fixed firmly on the floor. Your heart is hammering so hard, you're sure she can hear it. 3 seconds pass. 5. 10. You're blocking the door, Miss Catherine says. Her voice is flat, bored even, like you're a piece of furniture that's been left in an inconvenient location. I'm sorry, miss. The words come out as barely a whisper. I'll move, miss. You try to back down the stairs, but the bucket catches on the railing. Coal spills, black lumps bouncing down the steps, clattering against the wood, leaving dark smears on surfaces that someone, probably you, will have to clean. Miss Catherine sighs. It's a small sound, but it carries the weight of 1,000 disappointments. She steps over the scattered coal, her silk skirts brushing past you close enough that you can smell her perfume. Something floral, expensive, completely foreign. And then she's gone, disappeared down the corridor toward the family's part of the house, and you're left standing in the stairwell with an empty bucket and a heart that won't stop racing. You don't cry. You want to, but you don't. There's no time for crying. There's only the coal to gather, the stairs to clean, the fire to tend. Mrs. Whitmore will hear about this. Of course she will. News travels fast below stairs, faster than anywhere else. By dinner everyone will know that the new girl dropped coal in front of Miss Catherine, but the fire still needs feeding, so you gather what you can and shove it back in the bucket and continue up the stairs on legs that feel like water. Lady Ashworth's sitting room is empty when you arrive. Thank God for small mercies. You kneel before the fireplace, add coal to the flames, and try to steady your breathing. The heat from the fire warms your face, dries the tears that have somehow leaked out despite your best efforts. This is the job. This is what you signed up for. Being invisible means being treated like you don't exist, and when you fail at being invisible, when you accidentally become visible, the best you can hope for is indifference. Miss Catherine didn't scold you, didn't report you, didn't even seem particularly bothered. She just wanted you out of her way. That's the reality. You are in their way, always. Your very existence in their spaces is an intrusion, tolerated only because someone needs to light the fires and empty the chamber pots. The moment you become visible, you become a problem. You finish with the fire and slip back through the servant's door, bucket in hand. The stairs still need cleaning, your afternoon still needs salvaging, and somewhere in this vast house, Mrs. Whitmore is probably already frowning. The cleaning takes 20 minutes. On your hands and knees with a brush and a damp cloth, scrubbing coal dust from wood that you polished just yesterday. The bucket goes back to the coal store, the brush goes back to the housemaid's closet, and you go back to your regular duties, hoping that somehow, miraculously, nobody noticed. Mary finds you in the linen room, folding sheets with hands that still haven't stopped shaking. "Heard about your adventure on the back stairs," she says quietly. You close your eyes. How bad is it? Not as bad as you think. Miss Catherine didn't say anything to her mother. Probably forgot about it the moment she reached the drawing room. Mary helps you smooth a crease from a pillowcase, but Mrs. Whitmore knows. She always knows. Am I going to be dismissed? The question hangs in the air between you. It's the question every servant asks themselves a dozen times a day. One wrong step, one careless moment, one piece of coal dropped in the wrong place at the wrong time. No, Mary says finally, not for this, not for a first offence, but she'll be watching you now, closer than before, so don't give her another reason. You nod, relief flooding through you. Not dismissed. Not yet. You still have a roof over your head, food in your belly, a bed to sleep in. Tonight. The bar remains low, but you've cleared it once more. The trick, Mary says, lowering her voice, is to always know where they are, the family. If you know where they are, you can make sure you're somewhere else. That's what the bells are for, really. Not just to summon us. They tell us where the family is, what rooms they're using, where we need to avoid. She's right. The bells aren't just a communication system. They're a tracking system. When the drawing room bell rings, you know someone is in the drawing room. When the library bell stays silent, the library is probably empty. The whole house becomes a map of occupied and unoccupied spaces, and your job is to move through the unoccupied ones like a ghost. There are other ways too, Mary continues. The speaking tubes. Have you used them yet? You shake your head. You've seen the brass mouthpieces mounted on the walls in various places, but you haven't been trained on them yet. They connect different parts of the house. The family can speak directly into them, and we can hear them in the servants' areas. Mostly, Mrs. Whitmore uses them to give orders without coming to find us, but they also carry sound from upstairs. If you're quiet, you can hear conversations, movements. It helps you know when to enter a room and when to stay away. The house is listening to itself, you realise, through bells and tubes and the thin walls of the servants' corridors. Information flows constantly. Where is the family? What do they need? When can we safely enter their spaces? The answers are always available if you know how to pay attention. You're starting to understand why servants who've been here for years can move through the house like phantoms. They've internalised this information flow. They know, without thinking, that Lord Ashworth takes his afternoon brandy in the study at 3 o'clock, that Lady Ashworth walks in the garden before lunch, weather permitting, that Miss Catherine practices piano from 2 until 4, which means the music room is occupied, but the upstairs corridors are clear. It's surveillance, but turned on itself. You observe them so they never need to acknowledge your existence. That evening you witness a glimpse into a different servant's reality. Miss Perkins, the lady's maid, moves through the servants' hall on her way to the housekeeper's quarters. She hasn't sat among the lower staff in years. Her position is with the senior servants now, in the pug's parlour, dining from fine china. But this evening she appears exhausted, more drained than anyone you've seen who isn't coated in coal dust or submerged in wash water. Lady Ashworth suffered a migraine, someone murmurs from your end of the table. Miss Perkins tended to her through half the night, cold compresses and remedies and reading passages, until her voice failed. Personal attendants, that's the term they use for Miss Perkins and Mr. Crawford, the valet. They don't report to the housekeeper or butler, not truly. They answer solely to their masters, Lady Ashworth and Lord Ashworth. Their devotion, their hours, their very consciousness belongs to those they serve. In certain respects, their situation exceeds yours. Their chambers are more spacious, situated close to the family's quarters, allowing immediate response to demands at any moment. Their garments are superior, frequently hand-me-downs from their employers' closets. They accompany the family on journeys, experiencing regions of the nation, even corners of the globe that a housemaid will never witness. But in other respects, their burden is heavier. They're never genuinely relieved from service. Miss Perkins remains available every moment of every day, prepared to arrange hair, repair garments, apply makeup, provide solace, guard confidences. She possesses knowledge about Lady Ashworth that nobody else in this residence possesses, the private details of a woman's existence, her physical state, her temperament, her anxieties. That information becomes a weight. Miss Perkins bears it in isolation, prevented from sharing it with anyone, unable to release it, even during sleep. She maintains closer proximity to Lady Ashworth than Lady Ashworth's own children. And she exists in complete, absolute isolation because of that proximity. You observe her vanish through the entrance to the pug's parlour and consider whether you'd exchange positions with her. The status, the superior meals, the nicer quarters, but also the solitude, the burden of confidences, the awareness that your entire being is tied to one individual's requirements, one individual's states of mind, one individual's impulses. No, you conclude, you wouldn't exchange. Preferable to be one mechanism among numerous, expendable but autonomous. Preferable to have Mary in the mattress beside yours, sharing whispers before sleep. Preferable to have Annie for conversation in the scullery, Elsie for instruction in the kitchen. Preferable to belong to the collective, even at its lowest level, than to drift in isolation at its peak. The meal concludes. The staff disperse to their evening tasks. You're designated to assist with the bedchambers again, preparing covers and filling water vessels for the night. The family remains below, extending their post-dinner coffee, so the upper hallways are safe for now. You labour swiftly, methodically, with one sense, perpetually attuned to the bells. Drawing room, library, music room, the sounds of the family's evening converted into brass tremors that descend through the walls. Miss Catherine's chamber is final on your roster. You pause at the entrance, recalling this afternoon's interaction, the indifferent dismissal in her tone. But the chamber is vacant. She's below with her parents. You have nothing to apprehend. from furnishings and silk draperies. The bed is prepared, the fire is stoked, clean water in the vessel, clean towels on the washstand, everything flawless, everything undetectable. And there, on the writing table by the glass, you notice something that causes you to stop. A letter partially composed, the ink still fresh, the pen discarded beside it. You shouldn't examine it. You know you shouldn't examine it. What occurs in the family's chambers remains in the family's chambers. You observe nothing, detect nothing, retain nothing. But your vision captures a phrase before you can avert it. I cannot endure another season. I would prefer death to. The words terminate there, incomplete. A confession disrupted. You retreat from the table as if it's ablaze. Your hands are trembling again. This is precisely the type of situation Mary cautioned you about. The confidences, the views into existences that aren't yours, the information that weighs on you, that you can never divulge, that becomes your burden simply because you exist in the incorrect location at the incorrect moment. Miss Catherine Ashworth, with her silk gowns and intricate coiffure, would prefer death to attending another season, another cycle of balls and gatherings and matrimonial market exhibitions. You don't know how to process this information. You cannot inform anyone, cannot respond to it, cannot even contemplate it intensely without sensing you're violating something sacred. So you do what servants have perpetually done. You bury it far down in the location where all the other confidences reside. The medication on Lady Ashworth's bedside table, the overflowing ash receptacle in Master James's chamber, the frigid, uninhabited quality of Miss Catherine's immaculate bedroom. You observe nothing. You detect nothing. You retain nothing. You complete your tasks and retreat through the servants' entrance, abandoning the family's domain behind. The hallway is dim and confined. The atmosphere smells like coal residue and floor wax. Your feet navigate the return to the servants' hall without requiring illumination. This is your proper place, in the obscurity, in the intervals between. Tomorrow you will rise before daybreak and execute it all again. The fires, the chamber vessels, the endless cleaning and transporting and folding and scrubbing, the meticulous dance of invisibility, the perpetual consciousness of the family's location and where you need to avoid being. But this evening, just for an instant, you permit yourself to experience the burden of what you transport. All those confidences, all those views, all those minuscule fragments of other individuals' existences that accumulate in your memory like coal residue in your lungs. This is the cost of service. Not merely the painful spine and the damaged hands and the 16-hour days, but this, the knowing, the witnessing, the being present for instances you were never intended to observe. You transport their confidences and they never even perceive. That, potentially, is the most isolating aspect of all. March delivers rain, unceasing, grey, merciless rain that pounds against the attic glass and transforms the streets outside into streams of sludge. The coal shipments are delayed, the chimneys produce smoke, and throughout in the residence the moisture infiltrates like an unwelcome visitor. You've been at Ashworth House for 6 weeks now. Sufficient duration to comprehend the rhythms. Sufficient duration to predict Mrs. Whitmore's requirements before she expresses them. Sufficient duration to navigate through the rear hallways without deliberation. Your feet discovering the correct route, even in absolute darkness, but not sufficient duration to cease being frightened. The apprehension never truly vanishes. It exists in your chest, like a small frozen stone, constantly present, constantly pressing. Every occasion a bell sounds unexpectedly. Every occasion Mrs. Whitmore's footsteps draw near. Every occasion you enter a chamber and discover someone already present. The apprehension murmurs. This could be it. This could be the instant you commit an error too substantial to pardon. You've witnessed what occurs to servants who commit those errors. There was a girl preceding you. not your immediate predecessor, the one who departed because of Master James, but the one preceding that. Her name was Sarah, and she laboured in this residence for nearly 2 years. Kitchen maid, primarily. Assisted Mrs. Hartley with simpler preparations. Maintained the larder organised. Ensured the pantry was supplied. One day a silver spoon disappeared. It was an insignificant thing, truly, one spoon among dozens. The type of thing that might have fallen behind a cabinet or been inadvertently discarded with the remnants. But Lord Ashworth noticed it was absent from his breakfast tray, and Lord Ashworth mentioned it to Mr. Finch, and Mr. Finch reported it to Mrs. Whitmore, and Mrs. Whitmore inspected Sarah's chamber. They discovered the spoon beneath her mattress. Sarah insisted she didn't place it there, insisted on her mother's grave, on her own soul, on everything she held sacred. But it was irrelevant. The spoon was discovered, the judgment was pronounced. Sarah was terminated without a character reference, her possessions bundled into a sack and delivered to her at the rear entrance. Mary relayed this account on your second night in the attic chamber. A caution, she said, about how rapidly circumstances can shift. Did she genuinely steal it? You inquired. Mary's silent for an extended instant. I don't know. Perhaps. Or perhaps someone placed it there to eliminate her. We'll never know with certainty. Someone placed it there. The notion keeps you wakeful some nights. The concept that another servant, someone you labour beside every day, someone you share meals with, might fabricate evidence to destroy you. It occurs. Everyone knows it occurs. Jealousy, competition, personal resentments. The simplest method to eliminate a rival is to make them appear like a thief. So you're cautious. You never collect anything that isn't explicitly yours. You never remain in chambers where valuables are maintained. You never ever permit yourself to be isolated with the silver, but the apprehension persists because you can't regulate what other individuals do. You can't prevent someone from inserting a candlestick into your apron pocket when you're not observing. You can't demonstrate a negative. And in this residence, suspicion descends downward, perpetually downward, onto the individuals who possess the least authority to defend themselves. The footmen comprehend this superior to anyone. You encounter them properly for the first occasion during a rare, tranquil afternoon in late March. The family's absent, visiting relatives in the countryside for several days. The residence feels altered without them, somehow lighter. The staff navigate more freely, converse more candidly, express laughter in hallways where laughter is typically prohibited. There are 2 footmen at Ashworth House, William and George, both tall, both attractive, both employed specifically because they appear impressive in uniform. That's the occupation, truly. Appearing impressive, standing behind chairs at dinner gatherings, opening entrances for visitors, being ornamental in a manner that reflects favourably on the household. William is the senior footman, 24 years old, with dark hair and the type of bearing that suggests he's never slouched a single day in his existence. He's been here for 3 years, labours directly beneath Mr. Finch, and carries himself with the quiet assurance of someone who knows precisely where he stands in the hierarchy. George is more recent, 19, sandy-haired, with a rapid smile that he employs too frequently for Mrs. Whitmore's preference. He arrived 6 months before you did, still acquiring the techniques, still committing the small errors that identify him as inexperienced. They're both in the servants' hall when you descend for your afternoon respite, playing cards at the extended table, a prohibited activity technically, but with the family absent the regulations have relaxed just slightly. New girl, George says, glancing up with that rapid smile. Come participate with us, we require a third for whist. You hesitate. Mary's caution resonates in your mind. Don't become too familiar with the footman, but Mary isn't here presently. She's upstairs, exploiting the quiet to complete mending, and the afternoon extends ahead of you, vacant and tedious. I don't know how to play, you confess. We'll instruct you. George extracts a chair, gestures for you to sit. It's simple. William's dreadful at it regardless. William snorts but doesn't dispute. He shuffles the cards with practised facility, his extended fingers making the motion appear effortless. Disregard him. He's won precisely twice since he commenced here. He won't cease discussing it. You sit, you acquire knowledge. The game is more intricate than George suggested, but you begin to grasp it after several hands. The afternoon passes in a succession of cards and dialogue, the type of comfortable conversation that occurs between individuals who share a peculiar type of existence. George informs you about his family in Sussex. 3 sisters, all older, all married. His father was a valet before his hands became too unsteady to tie a proper cravat. Service flows in the blood, he says. You either escape it or you accept it. William is more reserved, more protected. He mentions a mother in London, a brother who departed to sea, but he doesn't elaborate. There's something deliberate about the manner he converses, the manner he observes, like he's perpetually calculating, perpetually evaluating. So, George says, distributing another hand. Has anyone cautioned you about Master James yet? The question arrives like a strike. You fumble your cards, nearly release them. George grins, clearly satisfied with himself for obtaining a reaction. I'll interpret that as affirmative. Mary mentioned something, you say carefully. She said there was a girl preceding me, the one who departed because of him. William and George exchange a glance. Something transfers between them, some shared information that you're not privy to. Her name was Ellen, William says after an instant. She was a housemaid, competent at her occupation, quiet, maintained to herself primarily. He pauses, stares at his cards. Master James developed a preference for her. You wait. The account hangs in the atmosphere, incomplete. It's not intricate, George says. His smile vanished now. Wealthy young men and servant girls. You comprehend how it proceeds. He cornered her in the linen chamber one evening, made it evident what he desired. She refused. He didn't appreciate that. Your stomach revolts. You contemplate the mornings you've spent isolated in the family's bedchambers, the vacant hallways, the closed entrances behind which anything could occur. What did she do? She approached Mrs. Whitmore, William says, reported him, believed the housekeeper would protect her. And another glance between them, heavier this occasion. Mrs. Whitmore informed Lady Ashworth. Lady Ashworth informed Lord Ashworth. And Lord Ashworth informed Ellen that she was terminated for spreading malicious rumours about his son. William's voice is level, emotionless, like he's reciting a news article. She departed the following day. No reference, no wages for the month, just her belongings in a bag and the rear entrance closed behind her. The cards in your hand feel suddenly substantial. You place them down on the table, no longer interested in the game. That's not equitable, you say, and immediately feel foolish. Of course it's not equitable. Nothing about this existence is equitable, but the words are released before you can stop them. Equitable doesn't enter into it, George says quietly. We're servants. They're family. When it's their word against ours, we lose. Every occasion you contemplate Miss Catherine's incomplete letter. I would prefer death to. You possess knowledge about the family that they probably don't desire known. But who would believe you if you informed anyone? Who would support your side against the word of a gentleman's daughter? Nobody. The answer is nobody. So what do? You inquire, how do you remain safe? William gathers up the cards, begins shuffling again. You acquire how to disappear. You acquire to never be isolated in a chamber with any of them, especially the young master. You acquire to have witnesses for everything, alibis for every instant of your day, and if that's not sufficient, he observes you, and for the first occasion you perceive something vulnerable behind those deliberate eyes. Then you flee before they can terminate you, before they can devastate your name. You locate another position, any position, and you depart. Has anyone ever fought back? George laughs, but there's no humour in it. Where would we proceed? The courts? The police? They'd laugh us from the station. We possess no authority here, none. The only action we can execute is survive. Survive. The word resonates through the vacant servants' hall. This is what it reduces to. Perpetually not thriving, not constructing a life, just surviving. Progressing through each day without being terminated, without being devastated, without concluding in the workhouse or on the streets. The card game is concluded. Nobody states so explicitly, but the atmosphere has shifted, the comfortable camaraderie replaced by something heavier. You excuse yourself, mumble something about tasks, ascend the rear stairs to the attic. Mary is there, needle in hand, repairing a torn petticoat. She glances up when you enter, interprets something in your face. What occurred? I conversed with the footman. You sit on your bed, suddenly depleted. About Ellen. Mary's needle pauses. Ah, you could have informed me more, cautioned me properly. I informed you to be careful around Master James. What more was there to state? She's correct, in a manner. The caution was sufficiently clear, but hearing the complete account, comprehending what occurred to Ellen, how rapidly and completely she was destroyed, do you contemplate departing? You inquire. Mary resumes her stitching. Sometimes everyone does, but where would I proceed? I've been in service since I was 14. This is all I comprehend. At least here I possess a bed and 3 meals a day, and individuals I can converse with. The same reasoning Annie provided you in the scullery? Could be worse. At least it's a roof. The mantra of the trapped, repeated so frequently, it begins to sound like wisdom. I keep contemplating about the spoon. You state, Sarah, what if someone executes that to me? Then you'll be terminated, and you'll locate another position, and you'll commence over somewhere else. Mary ties off her thread, bites it clean. It's not the conclusion of the world. It feels like it, but it's not. I've been terminated before. Did I ever inform you that? You shake your head. Surprised. Mary seems so competent, so permanent. The concept that she was once expelled from a household is difficult to imagine. I was 17, laboured in a residence in Yorkshire. The cook accused me of stealing bacon from the larder. I hadn't, but they discovered grease on my apron and that was sufficient. She shrugs. No reference. I walked to the adjacent town, located a position in a tavern, laboured there for 2 years, saved sufficient for a train ticket to London, applied to every residence that would accept me. Ashworth employed me as a junior maid. That was 11 years ago. 11 years, you repeat. Half your existence, more or less. An entire existence shaped by one false accusation and the slow, painful ascent back from devastation. The point is, you survive whatever occurs. You survive. You discover a method. That's what we execute. She sets aside the repaired petticoat, selects another. Now cease worrying about situations that haven't occurred yet. The family's returning tomorrow, which means early commencement, which means we both require sleep. Reserve the existential crisis for your day off. It's intended to be comforting, and in a strange manner it is. Mary has been through the worst and emerged on the other side. If she can execute it, perhaps you can too. You recline back on your narrow bed, staring at the sloped ceiling. The rain has ceased. Finally. Through the small glass you can perceive a few stars emerging from the clouds, the same stars that shine over the family's portion of the residence, over the silk-draped bedchambers and the gaslit hallways. The same stars that shine over the workhouse, the factories, the streets where terminated servants conclude when their fortune exhausts. You're so small in this vast mechanism, one expendable component among numerous. But you exist here. You have survived 6 weeks, and tomorrow you will survive another day. That will have to be sufficient. Sleep doesn't arrive easily. Your mind keeps circling back to Ellen, to Sarah, to all the nameless servants who preceded you and disappeared without a trace. The residence has consumed so many individuals. Their footsteps wore these same stairs, their hands polished this same silver, their confidences filled this same silence. And now they're vanished. Scattered to the winds, and nobody remembers them except in whispered cautions passed from one servant to the subsequent. Somewhere in the residence a clock strikes midnight. The sound travels up through the floors. muffled but persistent. 12 chimes. A new day commencing, though it won't feel genuine until dawn. Mary's breathing has slowed to the steady rhythm of deep sleep. She can execute that, fall asleep within minutes of closing her eyes. Years of practice, she says. When you only obtain 6 hours, you acquire not to waste any of them lying wakeful. You haven't acquired that skill yet. Your body is depleted, bone-tired from the day's labour, but your mind refuses to quiet. It keeps replaying the card game, the dialogue, the glance that passed between William and George when Ellen's name surfaced. There are so many methods to be destroyed in this existence. Theft, accusations, romantic entanglements, a broken dish, a burned roast, a word spoken too loudly in the incorrect hallway. The margins are so narrow, 1 foot on either side of the line, and the line itself is invisible, shifting, defined entirely by individuals who possess no reason to care whether you can cross it. You contemplate your mother back in the village. The last letter you dispatched was 3 weeks ago, a cheerful thing, full of lies. The labour is proceeding well. The other servants are kind. The family is respectable. You didn't mention the frigid attic chamber, the damaged hands, the apprehension that exists in your chest like a second heart. She would worry if she knew the truth, and there's nothing she could execute about it regardless. This is the existence you selected, the only existence available to girls like you, unless you desired to spend your days in a factory, losing fingers to machinery, or on a farm, breaking your spine in fields that would never belong to you. Service is supposed to be superior, safer, more respectable, and perhaps it is compared to the alternatives. But safe isn't the same as favourable. Respectable isn't the same as autonomous. The stars outside your glass have multiplied while you've been lying here. A whole field of them now, scattered across the clearing sky. Tomorrow the family returns. Tomorrow the resident snaps back to attention. Every servant in their location, every regulation enforced. Tomorrow you will be invisible again, a pair of hands and a pair of feet navigating through spaces you don't belong in, transporting confidences you didn't request. But this evening, just for these few hours, you exist as yourself, whoever that is, whoever that might become. You close your eyes and attempt to picture a different light existence. A cottage somewhere with a garden, a husband perhaps, if you're fortunate, children who don't have to proceed into service, who can acquire a trade or remain in school. A future that doesn't involve backstairs and chamber vessels and the perpetual grinding apprehension of termination. It's a pleasant dream, probably impossible, but pleasant. You maintain onto it as sleep finally begins to extract you under. The final thing you're conscious of is the sound of your own breathing, slow and steady, matching Mary's rhythm without intending to. 2 hearts beating in the darkness, 2 small existences waiting for dawn. April arrives like a held breath, finally released. The rain eases. The days grow extended, and through the high glass of Ashworth House, pale spring sunlight filters down into hallways that have been grey and frigid for months. Even the servants' quarters feel altered, less oppressive. The attic chamber is almost pleasant now, cool in the mornings instead of freezing. And you've commenced leaving the small glass cracked open at night to permit in the smell of the garden below. You've been here 3 months, a quarter of a year, sufficient duration that the routines have become muscle memory, your body navigating through the patterns of each day without conscious deliberation. Wake at 5, wash, dress, fires, chamber vessels, breakfast, cleaning lunch, more cleaning, dinner service, bed, repeat. The sameness of it could drive you insane if you permitted it. But there's a strange comfort in the repetition too, knowing what arrives subsequent, knowing what's expected, knowing that if you just maintain your head down and execute your labour, each day will pass without incident. Most days, regardless. This evening is altered. This evening the Ashworths are hosting a dinner gathering, 12 visitors plus the family. 16 individuals to feed, to serve, to impress. Mrs. Hartley's been in the kitchen since dawn, barking orders at anyone who arrives within earshot. Mr. Finch has been polishing his already immaculate shoes and checking his pocket watch every few minutes. Even Mrs. Whitmore seems tense, her typical stern expression sharpened to something almost anxious. The preparation commenced yesterday. Truly. The silver was polished twice. The crystal was washed and re-washed until it sparkled like ice. The dining chamber was cleaned from ceiling to floor, every surface dusted, every candlestick straightened, every chair positioned precisely 18 inches from the table edge. Mr. Finch measured with an actual ruler. The menu was planned a week ago. 8 courses, each one more elaborate than the previous. Oysters to commence, then soup, then fish, then a sorbet to cleanse the palate, then meat, 2 varieties with vegetables, then a savoury course, then dessert, then fruit and cheese. 8 separate acts in a culinary drama that will unfold over 3 hours of careful, choreographed service. Lady Ashworth has been fretting over the seating arrangement for days. Who sits adjacent to whom? Which visitors can be trusted to generate conversation? Which ones require to be maintained apart because of some ancient social slight that nobody else remembers or cares about? The place cards have been rewritten 3 occasions. A dinner gathering is a performance you comprehend that now everything the family executes is a type of theatre. And the servants are the stage hands, the prop masters, the invisible hands that generate the magic occur. But a dinner gathering is the grandest production of all. 16 actors on stage, dozens more behind the scenes, and the entire thing choreographed down to the second. Your role this evening is small. You'll assist in the kitchen during the early preparation, then assist with the clearing once the meal is underway. The actual service, the transporting of dishes and pouring of wine, that's for the footman. William and George have been practicing their movements all afternoon, walking through the dining chamber with vacant trays, marking their positions, rehearsing the ballet they'll perform when the visitors arrive. Left side for serving, William recites, adjusting his pristine white gloves. Right side for clearing. Never reach across. Never generate eye contact. Never speak unless spoken to. And if someone speaks to you? George inquires, though he already comprehends the answer. Brief answers. Yes, sir. No, madam. Certainly, sir. Nothing more. Your furniture. Beautiful, useful furniture. Beautiful furniture. That's what footmen are truly employed for. Their height and their appearance, dressed in elaborate uniform that matches the residence's colours, positioned like ornaments around the chamber. Lord Ashworth reportedly paid extra for William because he's precisely 6 feet tall, the perfect height for a senior footman. George, at 5'11", had to wear specially constructed up shoes for his first month until they could locate boots that generated up the difference. The visitors begin arriving at 7. You detect them from the kitchen, the clatter of carriages in the drive, the murmur of voices in the entrance hall. Mr. Finch is up there, greeting each arrival with grave formality, directing them to the drawing chamber, where Lady Ashworth waits with sherry and small conversation. Down here, the chaos intensifies. Mrs. Hartley moves like a storm through the kitchen, sampling and tweaking, calling out for more salt, less cream. Where's that saffron I requested 20 minutes back? The kitchen girls dart around her like moons circling a furious star. Steam billows from every corner. The temperature is unbearable, waves of it pouring off the massive cast-iron stove. You're positioned by the scullery entrance, prepared to fetch whatever needs fetching. Clean towels, fresh utensils, a backup plate when someone fumbles one. Annie's at her regular spot beside the basin, but tonight she's got 2 additional girls brought in from an agency to manage the avalanche of dishes that'll soon come tumbling down from upstairs. At 7:30, Mr. Finch materialises in the kitchen entrance. His expression is composed, but his gaze is keen, absorbing every element. "Soup in 10 minutes, he announces. "Is the consommé prepared?" Prepared and ready, Mrs. Hartley responds without glancing up from the sauce she's working. Mr. Finch gives a single nod and vanishes back up the steps. The timer has started. You peer through the gap in the service entrance as the opening course goes upstairs. William's in front, bearing the enormous silver pot as though it weighs absolutely nothing. George trails behind with the stack of heated bowls. They glide in flawless coordination, their movements synchronized, their expressions blank. The entrance swings closed behind them, and you're stuck in the hallway, attempting to catch what unfolds on the opposite side. Quiet. Then the delicate sound of ladle meeting bowl, hushed appreciation from the diners, the gentle noise of spoons touching porcelain. The opening course has started. In the kitchen, there's no moment to pause. The fish course is already getting arranged, delicate fillets of sole positioned on beds of green sauce. The meat course sits in the warming cabinet, the lamb rosy and flawless. The vegetables are getting their final touches. Glossed carrots and pureed spinach and miniature roasted potatoes no larger than your thumb. Course upon course travels up the steps. You forget about time, absorbed in the pattern of retrieve and transport. Wash and organise the plates, return downstairs in batches, scraped almost bare by diners with robust appetites. Excellent, Mrs. Hartley mumbles. They're consuming. That indicates it's excellent. Around the fourth course somewhere, you're dispatched upstairs to assist with the wine. The dining chamber is everything you anticipated and nothing you pictured. Crystal fixtures blazing with countless candles, silver and porcelain shimmering on white linen, the diners positioned around the table in their evening best, the ladies dripping with gems, the gentlemen squeezed into tailcoats that likely cost more than your father made in a year. The table itself is an artwork, white damask fabric pressed to perfection, flowing to the ground in exact folds. At every place setting, a miniature forest of glasses, each designated for a different wine. The napkins are shaped into complex designs, swans or fans or something geometric that must have consumed Mary hours to fashion. Fresh blooms stretch down the middle, greenhouse roses and lilies that flooded the house with their fragrance when they showed up this morning. Candelabras stand at points, their flames bathing everything in soft, gentle golden light. The result is enchanting, dreamlike, like entering a portrait from another era. And in the heart of it all, Lord Ashworth presiding like a monarch. You don't gaze at any of them straight on. You've absorbed that lesson. Your focus stays locked on the middle distance as you gather empty wine bottles and swap them with full ones. From the silver container Mr. Finch has set up, red for the meat course, white for the fish, champagne for the tribute. The butler positions himself near the sideboard, orchestrating everything with minimal gestures. A raised finger dispatches George to top off a glass. A subtle nod instructs William to remove the plates from the left portion of the table. An almost invisible shake of his head prevents a maid from stepping in at the incorrect instant. He observes everything, forecasts everything, fixes problems before they become apparent to the diners. You observe him operate, and it's like observing a composer direct an orchestra. Every action has significance. Every hesitation is intentional. The diners perceive nothing but effortless, flawless service. They have zero idea that behind that smoothness exists years of training, numerous small catastrophes prevented, an entire vocabulary of signals exchanged between butler and footman and maids. There's an instant halfway through the fish course when something nearly goes sideways. George extends toward a glass. At the identical moment, the diner next to it moves with her hand. Their trajectories are about to intersect, but Mr. Finch catches it developing, produces a tiny noise in his throat, and George stops, mid-reach. The diner's hand passes by harmlessly. George finishes his action a moment later, and nobody at the table registers anything whatsoever. This is what expertise resembles, you understand? Not merely understanding the regulations, but incorporating them so thoroughly that obeying them becomes as automatic as breathing. Mr. Finch has been executing this for 30 years. Every dinner gathering, every house visitor, every complex meal has been another practice session, another improvement. He is the concealed motor that makes the entire show possible. You drift back down to the kitchen with your emptied bottles, thankful to flee the intensity of the dining chamber. Up there, every action counts. Every error is noticeable down here in the steam and disorder. You can inhale. The meal concludes around 10 o'clock. Dessert travels upstairs, a soaring creation of meringue and cream that makes Annie gasp when she witnesses it. Coffee comes next, then port for the men as the ladies withdraw to the sitting room. By 11, the final diners have left, their coaches clattering away into the darkness. The family withdraws to their bedchambers, drained from hours of social acting, and downstairs the genuine work commences. The dishes are infinite, mountains of porcelain, peaks of crystal, streams of silver that all require washing, drying, buffing, storing away. The additional girls from the agency labour alongside Annie, their hands crimson and raw in the scalding water. You wipe until your arms throb, then wipe some more. Mrs. Hartley sits in her seat by the stove. At last, motionless, after 12 hours of perpetual motion. Her eyes are shut, but she's not dozing, just resting, collecting energy for tomorrow, when she'll need to execute it all again for the family's standard meals. Though nothing as complex as tonight. The kitchen girls are scouring surfaces, swabbing floors, returning the room to order. Tomorrow morning, when Mrs. Hartley shows up at 6, everything will be immaculate, prepared to begin again. You complete with the final wine glasses around midnight. Your spine is protesting, your feet have gone senseless, but the task is finished. The show was a triumph. Nobody fumbled anything, splashed anything, uttered anything incorrect. The invisible apparatus of the household operated flawlessly, and the diners never glimpsed a single mechanism. Mr. Finch materialises in the kitchen entrance. He appears exhausted too, though he'd never confess it. His perfect stance has sagged slightly, his shoulders not quite as squared as they were this morning. Well executed, he states. 2 words, that's everything. But from Mr. Finch, 2 words is virtually a standing applause. Mrs. Whitmore dismisses you for the evening. The rear steps feel even taller than typical, but you ascend them regardless, 1 foot ahead of the other, until you arrive at the attic. Mary's already there, face pressed on her pillow, still dressed in her work outfit. "How did it go?" she murmurs without raising her head extended. She's unconscious before you can respond anything else. You stand beside the window for an instant, too drained to shift, too energized to settle down quite yet. The garden below is silver in the moonlight, the spring blossoms glowing pale against the dark earth. Somewhere beyond there, in houses all throughout London, other servants are completing their own dinner gatherings, ascending their own rear steps, dropping onto their own narrow beds. An army of invisible individuals, all guarding the same mysteries, all bearing the same weights. You think about the diners you observed tonight, the sparkling ladies, the arrogant men. Did any of them question who prepared their food, who served their wine, who cleaned the crystal glasses they consumed from, and will clean again tomorrow? Likely not. That's the entire purpose of service, to make ease appear effortless, to make extravagance seem ordinary, to make the labour invisible so that the individuals who gain from it never need to consider it. You're skilled at being invisible now, perhaps too skilled. Sometimes you notice yourself drifting through the house like you're not actually present, like you're a spirit, haunting corridors that don't belong to you. The individual you were previously, the girl with aspirations and viewpoints and a voice. She feels distant, concealed under layers of yes, ma'am, and no, sir, and certainly I'll handle it immediately. But she's still present. You can sense her sometimes, in the tranquil moments, in the interval between one assignment and the next. She's waiting, patient as rock for the day when you can be visible again. That day appears very distant. Right now. You remove your shoes, your apron, your cap. The narrow bed groans as you recline. The pillow is compressed and uneven, the blanket thin, but after 16 hours on your feet, it feels like paradise. Outside, an owl hoots somewhere in the garden. A solitary sound, but not a melancholy one. Just a creature conducting its business in the dark, doing what owls do, existing its owl life. You wonder what that would resemble, to simply exist without needing to perform. To hunt and rest and soar, without anyone observing, evaluating, measuring your value by how invisible you can render yourself. The moonlight slides across the floor as you lie there painting silver rectangles on the bare wood. Your breathing decelerates, your muscles release. One by one, the soreness in your feet diminishes to a dull pulse. The strain in your shoulders dissolves into the thin mattress beneath you. You think about the dinner gathering, all those hours of arrangement, all that precise choreography, all that effort and nervousness and exhausted labour. And for what? A few hours of enjoyment for 16 individuals who will disregard it by next week, who will advance to the next gathering, the next show, the next evening of sparkle and wine and food they barely sample. But maybe that's not the purpose. Maybe the purpose isn't whether they recall. Maybe the purpose is that it occurred at all. That for one evening everything was flawless. The soup was steaming, the wine was chilled, the blooms were fresh and the candles were luminous, and the silver gleamed like captured moonlight. You created that happen. You and Mary and Annie and Mrs. Hartley and Mr. Finch and all the others. You produced something beautiful, even if nobody witnessed you execute it, even if nobody will ever recognise your name. There's a type of pride in that, a silent pride, concealed away like everything else in your existence, but genuine, substantial yours. Tomorrow there will be more fires to ignite, more chamber pots to drain, more silver to buff, and floors to scrub, and bells to respond. The great apparatus of the household will grind forward, and you will be one small component of it, rotating with the rest. But for now, just for these few hours, you can rest. The moon shifts across the sky, the house settles into silence, and somewhere in the darkness of the attic, between one breath and the next, you finally drift asleep. The first Sunday in May, Mrs. Whitmer grants you a half day. You almost don't accept it when she informs you half days are rare, valuable things, hoarded and allocated like gold pieces. Most servants receive one monthly if they're fortunate. Some houses grant half of Sunday after services, but Ashworth House isn't. Most houses here, time away is gained through months of perfect service, and even then it can be withdrawn on a whim. But today, for whatever cause, Mrs. Whitmore has determined you've earned 4 hours of liberty from 2 o'clock until 6. 4 hours to accomplish whatever you desire, travel wherever you wish, be whoever you select to be. Mary assists you get prepared. She loans you her quality shawl, the one with the blue embroidery that she reserves for special moments. It's nicer than anything you possess. Soft wool instead of coarse cotton, and it makes your plain grey dress appear almost respectable. "Where will you travel?" she inquires, fastening your hair into something more attractive than your usual work arrangement. You haven't contemplated it. The question itself feels unusual, like being questioned what you'd accomplish if you could fly. For 3 months, your universe has been the walls of Ashworth House, the attic, the kitchens, the family's bedchambers, the rear steps. You've forgotten that anything exists beyond them. "I don't understand," you confess. "Maybe just stroll." Mary grins. Stroll sounds pleasant. Obtain some air. Recall what the sun resembles. The sun? Yes. That yellow object in the sky that you glimpse through windows but seldom feel on your face. Today, you'll feel it. Today, you'll stand in the open air and inhale something that doesn't smell like coal powder or floor wax or the family's remaining dinner. At 2 o'clock precisely, you exit out the servants' entrance at the rear of the house. The entrance closes behind you with a soft snap and suddenly you're outside. Actually outside. The afternoon sun is heated on your face, the sky a pale blue streaked with thin clouds. The garden smells of soil and growing things, and somewhere close, a bird is singing. You stand there for an instant, just inhaling in and out. Pure air, fresh air. Air that belongs to nobody, that doesn't need to be gained or measured or distributed out in careful portions. Then you begin walking. The streets of London are overwhelming initially. So many individuals, so much noise, so much activity. Coaches rattle past on the cobblestones. Street merchants shout their merchandise. Children sprint and shriek and pursue each other through the crowds. After the regulated silence of Ashworth House, it feels like stepping into disorder. But it's a pleasant disorder, a human disorder. These individuals aren't servants. They're not performing. They're just existing their lives out in the open without anyone observing or evaluating or waiting for them to commit a mistake. You drift toward Hyde Park. It's not distant, maybe 20 minutes on foot, and Mary referenced that servants often travel there on their days away. The park is free, the paths are pleasant, and if you're fortunate, you might observe the fashionable folk promenading in their coaches. The gates are accessible. You walk through, and the noise of the city diminishes behind you. Trees border the paths, their leaves bright green with spring growth. Grass extends away on either side, dotted with individuals sitting and talking and enjoying the sunshine. A lake sparkles in the distance, and you can observe small boats gliding across its surface. You locate a bench near the water and sit down. Just sit. No assignment waiting, no bell about to sound. No Mrs. Whitmore materialising around a corner to delegate you labour. Just you and the sun and the gentle lap of water against the shore. It's almost unbearable. How pleasant it feels. Your body doesn't quite understand what to accomplish with itself. Your hands keep reaching for assignments that aren't there. Your ears keep listening for bells that aren't ringing. It requires almost an hour before the tension begins to depart your shoulders, before your breathing decelerates to something like normal. A duck paddles past, followed by a line of fuzzy ducklings, 6 of them, fluffy and golden, chirping softly as they swim. You observe them until they vanish around a bend in the lake. Such simple creatures. They don't concern themselves about bells or references or being dismissed without warning. They just swim and consume and follow their mother and exist. Then you observe the clouds. They drift overhead, lazy and white, shaped like nothing and everything. That one could be a vessel, that one a mountain. That one resembles, almost, like Mrs. Hartley's face when the soup is about to overflow. You laugh aloud at that. Actually laugh. The sound surprises you. When did you last laugh? Not the careful, quiet laughter of the servants' hall. The type that halts the instant a superior enters the room, but genuine laughter. Free laughter. Then you observe the individuals walking past. Couples arm in arm. Families with children. Elderly men with newspapers tucked under their arms. A nursemaid pushes a carriage along the path, the baby inside, cooing at the sky. 2 young men walk together, deep in conversation about something that makes them gesture wildly. A woman in a purple dress reads a novel on a bench across the lake, completely absorbed in whatever world the pages contain. Nobody gazes at you. Nobody understands you're a servant in your borrowed shawl with your hair fastened up nicely. You could be anyone. A shop girl on her day away. A young wife waiting for her husband. A woman of modest means enjoying a spring afternoon. The anonymity is intoxicating. For 4 hours, you don't need to be invisible. You can just be. Time passes differently out here. Slower, somehow. More gently. The sun shifts across the sky, and you barely register. You purchase a penny bun from a vendor near the park gates. Consume it slowly, savouring every bite. Genuine food selected by you, consumed at your own pace. It tastes like liberty. Around 4 o'clock you begin walking again. Not toward the house, not yet. Just walking, following paths you've never witnessed before, discovering corners of the city that exist beyond the narrow universe of service. You pass a church, with its entrances open, organ music drifting out into the street. A bookshop with dusty volumes stacked in the window. A tea room where women in fine dresses sit at small tables, laughing over cups of something expensive. A toy shop where a little girl presses her nose against the glass, staring at a doll in a blue dress. These places have always been here, all these lives occurring simultaneously with yours, just beyond the walls of the house, where you ignite fires and drain chamber pots. The universe is so much larger than the rear steps. The thought is both comforting and terrifying. Comforting because it indicates there's more than this. Terrifying because you might never reach it. A flower vendor catches your attention as you pass an elderly woman with a basket of violets, their purple petals bright against the green leaves. Penny a bunch, love. Pretty flowers for a pretty girl. You don't possess many pennies to spare, your wages are small and most of them travel home to your mother. But today feels special. Today feels like it deserves marking somehow. You purchase a bunch from the elderly woman. She tucks them into your hand with a gap-toothed smile. There you go, love. Enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy your Sunday. Such a simple phrase. Such an impossible luxury. You transport the violets back toward Ashworth House, taking the long route, squeezing every minute out of your remaining liberty. The streets grow quieter as you approach the wealthy neighbourhood. The houses grow larger, the individuals grow fewer. By the time you reach the servants' entrance, the sun is beginning to sink toward the rooftops, painting everything gold. You pause at the entrance just for an instant, taking one final breath of the outside air, one final look at the sky. The universe out here will keep rotating while you're inside. The sun will set and rise again. The flower vendors will call their merchandise. The ducks will swim their endless circles on the lake. And you'll be in there, in the half-darkness of the rear corridors, invisible and essential and utterly removed from all of it. The entrance feels heavier than it did when you departed. You push through it, and the familiar smells wrap around you like a shroud. Coal and wax and cooking meat. The sounds too. The distant clatter of pots, the murmur of voices, the creak of floorboards overhead. You're back. The spell is shattered. You're a servant again, but you still possess the violets. You transport them up to the attic, moving quietly through the rear corridors and locate an old jam jar to place them in. There's no ideal place for flowers in your tiny room, so you position them on the window ledge where they catch the final of the evening light. Mary comes in as you're arranging them. She's been labouring all afternoon, covering your duties while you were gone, and she appears tired, but she grins when she observes the flowers. Pretty, she states. Where do you obtain them? Flower vendor near the park? A penny? A whole penny on flowers? She shakes her head, but she's still grinning. You're learning to be a proper Londoner. You sit together on your beds, facing each other across the narrow space. The violets glow purple on the windowsill. The evening light is soft and warm. Was it pleasant? Mary inquires. Your half-day. You think about the park, the ducks, the penny bun, the anonymity of the crowded streets, the sensation of being just another individual in the universe instead of an invisible hand behind the scenes. It was pleasant, you state. Really pleasant. First one always is. Mary removes her shoes, wiggles her toes. Gets harder after that. You begin wanting it too much, counting the days until the next one, resenting the labour that keeps you from it. Is that what occurred to you? It's what occurs to everyone eventually. You need to locate a way to make peace with it. Otherwise, the wanting consumes you alive. You're quiet for an instant, thinking about that. The wanting. You felt it today, didn't you? The desperate wish to remain out there in the sun, in the crowds, in the universe, the reluctance to return through that heavy entrance. How do you make peace with it? You inquire. Mary considers the question. She's been in service for 11 years. If anyone understands the answer, she does. You locate the pleasant parts, she states finally. Even here, even in the labour, the pleasant parts exist if you search for them. A task accomplished well, a compliment from Mrs. Whitmore, a laugh in the servants' hall, a bunch of violets on the windowsill. She nods toward your flowers. You hold on to those. You let them be sufficient. Let them be sufficient. It sounds so simple. It likely isn't. But sitting here with the evening light diminishing and the violets glowing and Mary's voice soft and familiar in the quiet room, you can almost accept it. You can almost perceive a life where this is sufficient, where the small joys outweigh the endless labour, where the friendships matter more than the fear. Almost. The supper bell sounds from somewhere below. Time to return to labour. Time to return to the apparatus. But you take one more instant first, one more breath of liberty. The violets really are pretty, you think, worth every penny. Then you stand, smooth down your dress, and follow Mary down the rear steps. The evening passes quietly. Supper service is simple tonight. Just the family, no diners. You assist with the clearing, then join the other servants in the hall for your own meal. The food is plain but filling. Shepherd's pie created from yesterday's lamb, bread and butter. Weak tea. Annie sits beside you, her small body still damp from washing dishes. She's been promoted, sort of. Mrs. Hartley has begun teaching her to accomplish simple cooking assignments, which indicates she spends slightly less time at the basin and slightly more time learning actual skills. I created the gravy today, she whispers, nodding toward your plate, all by myself. Mrs. Hartley only corrected me twice. You sample the gravy. It's pleasant, rich and savoury with just a hint of something you can't quite identify. Rosemary, Annie states proudly. Mrs. Hartley's secret. Just a tiny bit. Nobody understands except her, and now me. You grin at her. This girl who came from the workhouse at 11, who spent her days elbow deep in greasy water, is becoming a cook. Slowly, painfully, one pot of gravy at a time, but becoming nonetheless. How long until you're a proper kitchen maid? You inquire. Annie shrugs, but there's hope in her eyes. Mrs. Hartley states, maybe by Christmas. If I keep learning, if I don't mess up. She lowers her voice even further. I desire to be a cook someday, a genuine cook with my own kitchen. It's such a large dream for such a small girl, her own kitchen staff, to supervise menus, to plan a life where she creates instead of just cleans. You will be, you inform her. And in this instant, observing her thin face glow with ambition, you accept it. Maybe that's what Mary indicated about locating the pleasant parts. Annie's gravy, the violets on the windowsill, the memory of sunlight on your face. After supper, there's a bit of time before bed. Mrs. Whitmore doesn't typically delegate labour on Sunday evenings, a small mercy that everyone guards jealously. The servants scatter to their various pastimes. Some play cards in the hall, some read by candlelight. Some just sit and talk, savouring the rare luxury of conversation without purpose. You travel back to the attic. The violets are still there, their petals just beginning to droop. They won't survive long. Flowers never do. But they're beautiful right now in this instant, and that's what matters. You sit on your bed and gaze out the window, the skies darkening, the first stars materialising over the rooftops of London. Somewhere out there, beyond the walls of this house, the city is still alive. Individuals are still walking, talking, existing their free lives. But in here, in this tiny room, there's a different type of peace. The peace of understanding where you belong. The peace of possessing a bed and a meal and a friend in the next bed, over the piece of violets on a windowsill purchased with a penny you gained yourself. It's not the life you pictured, not the life you would have selected, if selecting were an option. But it's the life you possess. And tonight, just for tonight, that feels like it might be sufficient. Mary comes in a while later. yawning. She observes you gazing at the violets and grins. "They're really pretty," she states. "We should obtain some every month, brighten this place up a bit." "Every month? Why not? It's only a penny. We can afford that. A penny monthly, 12 bunches of flowers yearly, 52 weeks of something beautiful to gaze at. Something that belongs to you and Mary and nobody else." "Okay," you state. "Every month." Mary climbs into her bed, pulls the thin blanket up to her chin. "Good night," she states, and closes her eyes. You remain at the window a little longer. The stars are brighter now, scattered across the sky like spilled sugar. The house is settling into sleep around you, its creaks and groans familiar as a heartbeat. Tomorrow the labour begins again. The fires, the chamber pots, the endless cycle of cleaning and serving and disappearing. But tonight there are stars and violets, and the memory of a spring afternoon when you were just, for a few hours, free. You recline, close your eyes, and let the quiet darkness wrap around you like a gift. Summer arrives to London like a fever. By June, the attic room has transformed from icebox to oven. The same small window that permitted freezing drafts all winter now offers nothing but hot, stale air. You and Mary rest with the covers thrown off, night dresses hiked up, hair plastered to your foreheads with sweat. Some nights you barely rest at all, just lie there in the darkness, waiting for a breeze that never arrives. The heat alters everything. The morning fires feel cruel now, an extra layer of warmth in a universe already too warm. You ignite them regardless, because the family desires hot water for their baths and warm rooms to dress in. Never mind that you've been sweating since before dawn. The coal appears heavier. In summer, the stairs appear steeper. Every assignment requires twice the effort it did in the cool of spring. The kitchen is worse. Mrs. Hartley labours in front of a stove that burns all day, her face crimson as a tomato, sweat dripping from her chin into the soup. She's shed weight since the warm weather began, unable to consume in this heat, surviving on tea and willpower. Annie's hands are permanently crimson now, scalded by hot water and steam. The scullery feels like a laundry, humid and close, the air thick enough to chew. You've begun dreading your kitchen shifts, understanding that an hour in there will leave you drenched and dizzy. But the family's portion of the house stays cool. High ceilings, thick walls, strategically placed windows that catch whatever wind exists. The sitting room has been rearranged so the ladies can sit near the garden entrances. Ice is delivered twice, weekly, now. Great blocks of it packed in straw, destined for the ice house in the cellar, where it will keep the family's drinks cold and their food fresh. The ice delivery is a production in itself. 2 men with a cart hauling blocks that weigh more than you do. The servants form a chain to transfer them down to the cellar, labouring quickly before they melt. The ice house is the one cool place in the entire building, and sometimes, when Mrs. Whitmore isn't observing, you linger there for a few extra seconds, letting the chill air wash over you like a blessing. You transport pitchers of lemonade up the rear steps, condensation dripping down your wrists. The family sips their cold drinks in their cool rooms, never questioning how the ice arrived there, how the lemons were squeezed, how the sugar was measured and stirred. They just consume. That's all they need to accomplish. 5 months you've been here now. The routines have become as automatic as breathing. You understand which floorboards creak and which stay silent. You understand that Mrs. Whitmore takes tea with 2 sugars but pretends she only takes 1. You understand that Mr. Finch hums quietly to himself when he buffs the silver, old hymns from his childhood that he likely doesn't realise he's singing. You understand that Master James has stopped lingering in the corridors near the housemaids' quarters. Something occurred. You're not certain what, but he was dispatched away to visit relatives in Scotland for a month. And when he returned, he appeared changed, quieter, less predatory. Whatever his father stated to him must have been severe. The house breathes easier because of it. You all do. One evening in late June, Mr. Finch makes an announcement in the servants' hall. The annual servants' ball will be held on Midsummer's Eve. The family has approved it. One night of celebration right here in the house when the normal regulations will be suspended, and the servants can dance and sing and enjoy themselves like ordinary individuals. The servants' ball. You've heard whispers about it, fragments of stories from those who've been here long enough to recall previous years. It's a tradition in grand houses, a single evening when the universe turns upside down. The family serves the servants. The butler can request the mistress to dance. The scullery maid can sit in the sitting room and pretend, just for a few hours, that she belongs there. It's not as grand as it sounds, Mary warns you later in the attic room. The family remains for maybe an hour, perhaps slightly more. They perform their ritual of serving us a single course. Then they vanish and abandon us to ourselves. Yet somehow it matters. It matters. Indeed, in an existence counted out through bedpans and coal scuttles, even a minor something deserves acknowledgement. The preparations commence right away. Mrs. Hartley begins organising a distinctive menu. Food meant exclusively for the servants, not scraps from the family's dinner. Cold cuts and pastries, items that won't demand the kitchen become any more sweltering than it currently is. Strawberry cream for the final course, prepared with what remains of the warm season berries. Genuine cream, not the diluted version the junior servants typically receive. The chambermaids scrub the servants' quarters until everything sparkles. Each area gets washed, each spider's web eliminated, each piece of bronze buffed until it reflects the light. Someone locates paper decorations in a storage area left behind from previous years and suspends them from the shallow ceiling. Another person uncovers a container of candle remnants, entirely usable aside from being somewhat bent, and positions them throughout every space. William and George reorganise the furniture on 3 separate occasions, debating about the optimal arrangement for movement. The extended table is relocated beside a single wall. The wooden seats are piled in the hallway. An area emerges at the centre of the chamber, stone flooring brushed spotless, prepared for feet that seldom have opportunity to move rhythmically. You possess nothing exceptional to put on. None of the junior servants possess anything. Yet Mary has been setting aside funds for several months, a handful of coins intermittently. Then 2 mornings before the celebration, she returns from her afternoon liberty with a measure of azure ribbon. For your locks, she mentions, pushing it toward your palms to coordinate. My wrap will appear almost decent. The ribbon feels delicate and vivid, the precise shade of a warm season heaven. You grasp it as though it's constructed of precious metal. Nobody has presented you with anything since you departed your residence. Not a genuine present, an item selected and purchased with another person's consideration. Your vision becomes moist and you must blink forcefully to prevent weeping. Mary, this wasn't necessary. I understand it wasn't necessary. I desired to. She presses your palm. You're my companion. Companions present each other with ribbons. That's the manner of it. Companions. The term finds a place within your core like a heated pebble. You possess a companion, an authentic one, another person who considers you even during your absence, who reserves her coins to purchase you an item of beauty. The eve of midsummer materializes, warm and luminous, the most extended morning of the calendar, the sun remaining in the atmosphere until almost 10 in the evening. The labour doesn't cease, naturally. Hearths still require igniting, though fewer of them presently. Chamber vessels still require disposal. The household still requires nourishment. Yet there exists an electricity in the residence, a hum of expectation that renders even the most burdensome duties feel less heavy. Annie cannot cease smiling. George continues erupting into fragments of melody. Even Mrs. Whitmore appears somewhat less rigid than typical, though that could merely be hopeful imagination. Around 7 in the evening the servants assemble in the chamber. The extended table has been relocated beside the surface, creating area at the centre for movement. Candles flicker throughout every space, projecting warm illumination across faces that typically only witness the colourless glow of early dawn. The paper decorations flutter in the current from the unsealed windows. You're attired in your finest garment, the grey one you came in wearing with Mary's azure ribbon woven through your locks. It's minimal, yet it belongs to you. And this evening, that's sufficient. The household materialises around 7:30. Lord and Lady Ashworth, Master James, Miss Catherine. They're attired informally. Comparatively speaking, the women in uncomplicated evening garments, the gentlemen without their formal jackets. They appear peculiar somehow, reduced in size, more mortal. Lady Ashworth transports a serving dish of finger foods. Her palms are hesitant, obviously unaccustomed to the mass. She positions the dish on the surface with apparent relief, and a modest cheer rises from the assembled servants. "Joyous midsummer," she announces, her tone elevated to project. "Gratitude to all for your dedication this calendar period. Please experience enjoyment." It's an address she's presumably delivered countless times previously. The phrases are empty, theatrical, yet the servants cheer regardless because that's the expected response. That's the performance everyone consents to enact. Lord Ashworth distributes beverages, genuine beverages from genuine containers into genuine vessels that he transports around the chamber on a serving dish. Observing him struggle with the cork is almost worth the cost of witnessing. His palms aren't constructed for this variety of labour. They're constructed for marking documents and greeting palms with significant gentlemen. The uncomplicated task of unsealing a wine container defeats him for almost 60 seconds. Mr. Finch, positioned adjacent, observes with a countenance of deliberately restrained torment. You can virtually witness him resisting the impulse to intervene and execute it correctly. Miss Catherine progresses through the chamber, presenting dishes of confection. She arrives at you and pauses, her vision flickering with what could be recollection. "You're the young woman from the stairway," she mentions quietly, "the one transporting the coal." Your pulse ceases. "Affirmative, miss. I apologise regarding that, miss. Don't apologise." She extends the dish. "Accept 2 portions. The chocolate surpasses the citrus." Then she's departed, progressing to the subsequent servant, abandoning you grasping 2 portions of confection and questioning if that genuinely occurred. The household remains for precisely 60 minutes. They distribute, they smile, they engage in brief conversation with the senior servants. Then, around 8:30, they withdraw to their own section of the residence, and the genuine celebration commences. An individual produces a violin. Another person possesses a tin whistle. The melody commences, unrefined and cheerful, nothing resembling the refined compositions that descend from the household's gatherings. This represents folk melody, movement melody, the variety of compositions that compel your feet to shift whether you desire them to or not. George grasps your palm before you can object. Approach, recent arrival, moment. You acquire the ability to move rhythmically. You don't comprehend the sequences. You stumble and trip and almost collide with Annie, who's rotating past with William. George expresses amusement and secures you, positions you back upright, demonstrates the fundamental pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, circling and circling until the chamber becomes indistinct. Yet it doesn't signify that you're awkward. Nobody's observing, nobody's evaluating. For once within this residence, you're permitted to be vocal and flawed and completely, entirely observable. The melody transitions to something more rapid. A dance. An individual identifies it. You're drawn into a formation of dancers, palms connected, feet travelling left and right and around your associate and returning again. The chamber is rotating. You're experiencing amusement so intensely you can scarcely respire. Agnes secures your vision as you spiral past. She's moving rhythmically with Mr. Crawford, the manservant, both of them shifting with unexpected elegance. Even Mrs. Whitmore is swaying somewhat beside the beverage container, tapping her foot to the pulse. You've never witnessed her appear so mortal. The movement continues for many hours. You exchange associates, recovering your respiration between melodies, consuming vessels of the beverage that Mrs. Hartley prepared with what remains of the warm season strawberries. Your ribbon becomes unfastened, and Mary secures it again, her fingers rapid and tender against your scalp. Your feet protest, yet you persist in moving anyway. At a certain moment you discover yourself moving rhythmically with William. He's more reserved than George, more cautious, yet he shifts as though he was created for it. His palm on your midsection is constant and courteous. You're acquiring it, he mentions. The movement. You're skilled. I'm terrible. You're passionate. That matters more. He rotates you around, and momentarily you secure a glimpse of the glass opening. Obscure outside presently, the most extended morning finally yielding to darkness. The candles have diminished, the melody has decelerated. Individuals are beginning to migrate toward the boundaries of the chamber, fatigued and content. The violin initiates a waltz, gradual and pleasant, nothing resembling the untamed dances from earlier. William modifies his grasp, and you discover yourself shifting in a tender circle, your feet finally locating the pulse. I'm departing, he mentions quietly. Conclusion of warm season. Located a position in a residence in Brighton, superior compensation closer to the ocean. The information arrives strangely. You've only been acquainted with William for several months. Yet, in that duration, he's become part of the scenery of this location, part of the group that causes the mechanism to function. Will you experience longing for it? You inquire. Ashworth residence. He contemplates the inquiry seriously, segments of it, the individuals primarily. George, Mr. Finch, you all. He smiles minimally. Not the labour, never the labour, yet the individuals. Indeed, I'll experience longing for them. The waltz concludes. William retreats, bows ceremonially, as though you're a woman at an authentic celebration. You curtsy reciprocally, experiencing somewhat absurd, yet also somehow recognised. Fortune, he mentions. You'll manage adequately here. You possess the correct disposition for it. Then he's departed, obtained by another associate for another movement, abandoning you positioned in the middle of the flooring with his phrases resonating in your consciousness. The correct disposition, whatever that signifies. At a certain moment you discover yourself positioned beside the unsealed glass opening, cooling between sequences. The grounds are silver in the lunar illumination, the blossoms ghostly pale. You can perceive the melody behind you, the amusement, the impact of feet on the stone flooring. Mary materializes beside you, heated and content. Not unsatisfactory, is it? It's magnificent. Don't become accustomed to it, yet she's smiling. Tomorrow we're returning to chamber vessels and coal containers. I comprehend. You recline against the window frame, permitting the darkness air to cool your face. Yet this evening we're not. No, this evening we're not. You position there together, observing out at the grounds, perceiving the melody. Two servants in a magnificent residence, appropriating a moment of tranquility from an existence that seldom provides any. I'm content you came here, Mary mentions suddenly to Ashworth residence. I comprehend it's challenging. I comprehend it's not what you envisioned. Yet I'm content you're here. You contemplate the past 5 lunar cycles, the apprehension and exhaustion, the perpetual labour, the mysteries you transport, the hazards you manoeuvre, the constant effort of being unobservable. Yet also this, the companionships, the modest kindnesses, the flowers on the window frame, and the azure ribbon in your locks. And this moment presently, with melody performing and the lunar body ascending, and another person informing you they're content you exist. I'm content too, you mention, and you signify it. The celebration diminishes around midnight. The candles sputter and expire. The performers collect their instruments. The servants migrate away to rest, fatigued and content, transporting the recollection of this darkness like a possession. You ascend the rear stairway a final instance, Mary beside you, your feet objecting with each ascension. The uppermost chamber is still warm, the atmosphere still dense, yet somehow it doesn't signify as much this evening. You unfasten the azure ribbon and position it deliberately on your cushion, an item to preserve, an item to recollect this darkness by. Mary's already in rest, her vision closed, a modest smile still on her expression. "Pleasant darkness," she murmurs. "Pleasant darkness." You recline gazing at the inclined ceiling, perceiving the residents find peace into silence around you. The melody is still performing in your consciousness, faint and distant. Your feet are still tapping out the pulse of the final movement. Tomorrow the labour commences again, yet that's tomorrow. This evening you are a young woman who moved rhythmically at a celebration, a young woman with an azure ribbon and a companion who's content she exists. A young woman who belongs, however imperfectly, to this peculiar minor world. Beneath the stairways, the lunar illumination progresses across the flooring. Your respiration decelerates, and somewhere in the area between waking and slumber you discover yourself smiling. The foliage commences to transform in the 9th month. You observe it initially through the glass openings of the elevated corridors, flashes of gold and copper among the verdant. The grounds that were so abundant in warm season are beginning to diminish, the roses releasing their petals, the delayed blossoms making their final resistance before the freeze materializes. There's a sharpness in the early dawn atmosphere presently, a suggestion of the frigid lunar cycles to materialize. The dawns are altered presently, more obscure. When you awaken at 5, the atmosphere is still black, the celestial bodies still observable through your modest glass opening. The uppermost chamber has cooled again, not yet freezing, yet no longer. The heating appliance it was in the 7th month. You've commenced sleeping beneath the covering again, drawing it up to your chin, appreciating those brief minutes of warmth before the morning commences. The residence has transformed too, in manners both substantial and modest. Recent draperies in the reception chamber, substantial velvet to obstruct the winter currents. A recent floor covering in the book chamber replacing one that was deteriorated thin by generations of feet. The household has returned from their warm season travels, bronzed and recovered, prepared to recommence their regular patterns. You've been at Ashworth residence for almost a calendar period. The contemplation strikes you one dawn as you're positioning hearths in the reception chamber, almost a calendar period since you materialised, terrified and uncertain with nothing except a modest container and a letter of reference. Almost a calendar period of awakening before sunrise, of coal and chamber vessels and silver buffing, of acquiring the ability to vanish. So much has transformed, and so minimal. William departed in the 8th month, precisely as he mentioned he would. The residence in Brighton presented him a senior position, increased compensation, a chamber with a perspective of the ocean. George wept when he mentioned farewell, though he pretended it was particles in his vision. Mr. Finch grasped William's palm and mentioned something quiet that caused William to position a minimal amount more upright. Then he was departed, his container loaded onto a vehicle, his manservant's uniform returned to Mrs. Whitmore's storage area. The recent manservant is identified as Edward. He's more youthful than William was, more apprehensive still, acquiring the silent language of dedication. You secure yourself presenting him the identical guidance Mary presented you all those lunar cycles previously. Observe where the household is positioned. Acquire the sounds of the signals. Maintain your consciousness lowered and your vision unsealed. Peculiar to be the one presenting guidance presently. Peculiar to comprehend, you genuinely comprehend items worth distributing. Annie has progressed upward in the world too. She's an authentic kitchen assistant presently, no longer confined at the washing area all morning. Mrs. Hartley has accepted her beneath her guidance. instructing her the mysteries of preparations and cooked dishes, the coordination of a flawless baked egg dish. There's a recent washing assistant, a young woman even more youthful than Annie was, and Annie manages her with the identical gruff kindness that she herself once received. This rotation persists. Individuals materialize, individuals depart, yet the residence remains. The mechanism persists in rotating. You're positioned in the servants' chamber one 10th-month evening, repairing a damaged protective garment, when Mrs. Whitmore materializes in the entrance. Your instrument freezes mid-penetration. Nothing favourable ever materializes from Mrs. Whitmore, materializing unexpectedly. The other servants have observed too. Conversations pause, vision flickers between you and the domestic supervisor. George ceases manipulating his game cards. Annie observes upward from her textile work, yet Mrs. Whitmore's countenance isn't rigid. It's something alternative, something almost tender. A phrase she mentions, gesturing toward the hallway. You position down your repairing and follow her, your pulse beating more rapidly with every ascension. This is it, you contemplate. An incident has occurred. An incident is incorrect. You're being released or relocated or... Mrs. Whitmore ceases in the vacant hallway, rotates to face you. The illumination flickers on the surfaces, projecting peculiar shadows. She's silent for a moment and you observe items you've never observed previously. The marks around her vision, the colourless threads in her obscure locks, the minimal inclination in her shoulders that materializes from calendar periods of transporting the mass of an entire household. You've been here almost a calendar period, she mentions. Affirmative, madam, your labour has been satisfactory, more than satisfactory in actuality. You've generated no difficulty, you've acquired rapidly, you've demonstrated discretion. She pauses, and you believe you witness the phantom of a smile cross her expression. I'm advancing you to reception assistant. You'll commence subsequent week. Reception assistant. The phrases don't create comprehension initially. Reception assistants are senior reception assistants, distribute refreshment and respond to entrances and interact with visitors. Reception assistants are trusted. Reception assistants attire superior uniforms and consume at the elevated conclusion of the servant's surface and possess genuine respect. Madam. I appreciate, madam. Don't appreciate me. You've merited it. She straightens her already straight collar, a gesture you've witnessed her execute 1,000 instances. Your recent uniform will be prepared by the second morning. You'll shadow Agnes for the initial week, acquire the ceremonial dedication. Following that, you're independently. She rotates and progresses away before you can mention anything alternative. You position in the hallway, stunned, attempting to process what precisely occurred. Through the entrance of the servants' chamber, you can witness the others, observing, anticipating information. Reception assistant. You're going to be a reception assistant. Your legs feel peculiar as you progress back into the chamber. Everyone is observing you. George elevates an eyebrow. Annie compresses her expression. Mary, who comprehends you superior to anyone, is already commencing to smile. Well, she inquires. Reception assistant, you manage to mention. I'm going to be a reception assistant. Mary is the initial individual, you inform. She vocalizes so vocally that Mrs. Hartley materializes out of the kitchen to witness who's being murdered. When she perceives the information, even she creates a smile. Regarding duration, Mrs. Hartley mentions. You've acquired the palms for it. Constant, cautious, not resembling some of these awkward young women they transmit us these mornings. George impacts you on the dorsal area so forcefully you almost collapse forward. Annie embraces you, her thin limbs surprisingly powerful. Even Mr. Finch, when he perceives, presents you a solemn gesture that feels like a standing recognition. That darkness in the uppermost chamber, Mary produces a modest container of fortified wine that she's been concealing for a distinctive occasion. To the recent reception assistant, she mentions elevating the container. May she never release a refreshment vessel. You accept a consumption. It's pleasant and warm, expanding through your core like liquid luminescence. I couldn't have executed it without you, you mention. Any of it. You instructed me everything I instructed you to ignite a hearth without igniting the residence ablaze. The remainder you comprehended yourself. She accepts the container back, consumes deeply. I'm satisfied with you, genuinely. You materialized here apprehensive as a rabbit, and observe you presently. Observe you presently. You contemplate the young woman who materialized previous winter, trembling in her thin covering, reacting at every signal. She feels like a foreigner, another person you used to comprehend an extended duration previously. In an alternative existence, you're not that young woman anymore. You're another person alternative, another person more powerful, another person who comprehends how to maneuver this world, how to survive its hazards, how to locate its modest delights. Do you recollect what you informed me? You inquire regarding locating the favourable segments. Mary gestures. I contemplate, I comprehend presently what you signified. You observe around the tiny chamber, at the inclined ceiling and the narrow resting surfaces and the flowers on the window frame, replaced monthly as guaranteed, a burst of purple against the colourless. It's not regarding pretending the challenging segments don't exist. It's regarding not permitting them be the exclusive item you witness. Observe you, becoming philosophical. Mary smiles. Must be the fortified wine. You express amusement, genuinely express amusement, without verifying initially to witness if anyone's perceiving. The sound occupies the minimal chamber, rebounds off the surfaces, vanishes into the darkness. The weeks progress. You acquire your recent function, the ceremonial performance of reception dedication. How to transport a refreshment serving dish without vibrating the vessels, how to announce visitors without stumbling over their identifications, how to be present sufficiently to anticipate requirements, yet unobservable sufficiently to diminish into the wall covering. It's more challenging than domestic labour in some manners, less difficult in others. The physical labour is lighter, yet the pressure is superior. You interact with visitors presently, with the household themselves. A released serving dish or a mispronounced identification reflects not merely on you, yet on the whole household. Yet you locate that you're skilled at it, superior than you anticipated. Your palms are constant, your tone is tranquil, your impulses are acute. The calendar periods of observing, of acquiring, of allocating attention have prepared you for this. The 11th month materializes, colourless and frigid. The hearths consume all morning presently, and the coal deliveries have doubled. The grounds outside are exposed, the vegetation skeletal against the pale atmosphere. Winter is materializing again, your second winter in dedication. Yet this calendar period you're prepared for it. On a tranquil evening in delayed 11th month, you discover yourself independently in the elevated corridor. The household's at dinner. The other servants are beneath stairways consuming their own meal. You possess several minutes before you're required, an uncommon section of stillness in the perpetual acceleration of the morning. You cease beside a glass opening and observe out at the municipality. The street illuminations are ignited, sections of yellow illumination in the assembling obscurity. Vapour is progressing in from the waterway, softening the boundaries of everything, rotating the familiar streets into something mysterious and recent. Somewhere out there, vehicles are vibrating residents. Households are positioning down to dinner. Children are being positioned to rest. An entire world progressing regarding its business. Precisely beyond these surfaces, an illumination worker progresses down the street beneath, his extended implement arriving upward to contact each illumination in rotation. You've witnessed him previously many instances, yet this evening you observe him differently. He possesses a function too, a pattern. a location in the magnificent mechanism of the municipality. He ignites the illumination so that individuals can locate their manor residence. You ignite the hearth so that individuals can maintain warmth. Alternative duties, yet the identical purpose, causing existence a minimal amount less difficult for another person. Alternative. You contemplate your maternal parent in her cottage in the settlement. You transmitted her compensation previous month more than typical from your recent minimally larger compensation. Reception assistants merit more than domestic assistants. Not much more, yet sufficient to create a distinction. Sufficient to purchase her a recent wrap for winter, perhaps. Or a portion of animal flesh for the weekly vessel. She inscribed returning previous week, her inscription unsteady yet legible. She's satisfied with you, she mentioned. Her offspring, a reception assistant in a magnificent London residence. She's informed all the adjacent residents. They don't entirely believe it, yet she doesn't concern. You contemplate the future. Another calendar period here, perhaps two. Then perhaps a position somewhere alternative. A residence in the territory, or a more magnificent residence in the municipality. You could be a head domestic assistant someday, perhaps even a domestic supervisor if you labour forcefully sufficiently, if you're fortunate sufficiently, if you can tolerate to present your whole existence to dedication the manner Mrs. Whitmore has, or perhaps you'll depart dedication altogether, acquire married, possess children, construct an existence outside these surfaces. There are gentlemen in London, labouring gentlemen, who could desire a spouse who comprehends how to function a household, who isn't apprehensive of forceful labour, who can rotate a coin into a meal. The future extends ahead of you, uncertain yet possible. Occupied with paths you haven't selected yet. Some of them progress further into dedication, some of them progress out. You can't witness where any of them progress, not genuinely. You can only accept the subsequent ascension and trust that the path will become transparent. For presently, though, you're here, in this residence, in this existence. And that's sufficient. The dinner dedication progresses smoothly. You assist in clearing the final course, transport the coffee serving dish to the reception chamber, position prepared in case anything alternative is required. Lady Ashworth glances upward as you distribute her coffee, and for precisely a moment your vision meets. Gratitude. She mentions precisely that. Two phrases, yet there's something in her tone that sounds almost as though she signifies it. You gesture, retreat, diminish into the background. The unobservable mechanism persists in rotating. Subsequently, much subsequently, you ascend the rear stairways a final instance. The residence is tranquil presently, the household in their resting surfaces, the hearths secured for the darkness. Your feet comprehend every ascension, every noise, every shadow. This stairway is as familiar as your own pulse. Mary is already sleeping when you arrive at the uppermost chamber. Her respiration is gradual and constant, the sound of another person at tranquility. You undress quietly, suspend your uniform on its attachment, draw on your darkness garment. The flowers on the window frame have commenced to incline. Tomorrow you'll purchase fresh ones, persist the tradition you and Mary initiated all those lunar cycles previously. A coin a month. A modest rebellion against the colourlessness. A reminder that beauty exists even in the most challenging locations. You recline down on your narrow resting surface. The cushioning declines in familiar locations shaped by a calendar period of your sleeping form. The covering is thin, yet warmer than it was previous winter. Or perhaps you're merely more accustomed to the frigid. Through the modest glass opening you can witness the celestial bodies. The identical celestial bodies that illuminated over this residence 100 calendar periods previously, that will illuminate over it 100 calendar periods from presently. The identical celestial bodies that illuminate over your maternal parents' cottage, over the settlement where you were created, over all the locations you've been and all the locations you could someday progress. You're so modest beneath them, one existence among millions, one servant in a perpetual chain of servants extending back through history and forward into the future. Yet you are here. You are alive. You are, against all possibilities, content. The contemplation surprises you. Content, is that what this sensation is? Not delight precisely? Not the untamed, fleeting contentment of the servant's celebration or the pleasant relief of an afternoon liberty. Something more reserved, something more profound. The contentment of belonging, of comprehending your location in the world, even if that location is modest. You contemplate all the individuals who have slept in this chamber before you, all the domestic assistants and kitchen young women and reception assistants who reclined in this identical resting surface, observed at these identical celestial bodies, envisioned their own visions of a future beyond these surfaces. Some of them escaped, some of them remained forever, some of them were fractured by the labour, and some of them were shaped by it into something more powerful. You don't comprehend yet which you'll be. Nobody comprehends until they arrive there. Yet this evening you select to believe you'll be one of the powerful ones. This evening you select to believe that the modest delights are worth the struggle, that the companionships matter, that the labour possesses significance even when it's challenging. Mary stirs in her slumber, murmurs something unintelligible, finds peace again. Your companion, your ally, the individual who instructed you how to survive this location, and more significantly, how to locate moments of elegance within it. The residence produces sounds around you, finding peace into the frigid 11th month darkness. Somewhere beneath the entrance closes softly, somewhere above the current whispers across the roof panels. You're secure, you are warm, you're precisely where you're supposed to be. Your vision grows heavy, the celestial bodies indistinct and soften through the glass opening. The final contemplation you possess before slumber accepts you is of the flowers, purple against the colourless, modest yet beautiful, temporary yet worth every coin. Tomorrow will transport recent hearths to ignite, recent duties to complete, recent challenges to manoeuvre. Yet that's tomorrow. This evening there's only this, the tranquil chamber, the constant respiration, the celestial bodies maintaining their ancient observation. Permit your vision to close presently. Permit your respiration to decelerate. Permit the world outside this moment to diminish away precisely as it diminishes for the young woman in the uppermost chamber, the servant who located her location. The modest existence that somehow against all possibilities became sufficient. The obscurity is tender, the silence is kind. Rest presently. You've merited.